For the final time this split, welcome everyone to the ALGS North American Challenger Cup. I'm Tenrek. With me is Tom, and we're here for the finals of the fourth Challenger Cup. Tom, a lot of teams trying to make it into this final. 22 teams making it to the Pro League qualifier after this event is said and done. How you feeling?
I'm feeling really excited. I think that this is the absolute best time to be joining you to look over these games today. We've got basically everything on the line. We've got teams competing for the win to qualify straight into the losers bracket. We've got teams trying to push into those top 8 places to get into the winners bracket. And then we've got some teams that are probably just playing for fun today. Their spots are already secured. They might be testing out some new compositions. They might be maybe trying to lock down a landing spot for that all-important Pro League qualifier in just a couple of weeks. Everybody's got something on the line. That's what's so great about today's action.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't procrastinate for a second. Everybody's still trying to make sure that they can rack up those points. Speaking of which, if you're a little new to Challenger Cup, I guess we need to kind of reel you in a little bit so you can understand what we're about to talk about, because there is a lot to go through in this Challenger Cup. But how it essentially works is over the course of this split, we've gone through 4 Challenger Cups. We're in the 4th one right now, and over the course of several rounds, depending on how many teams have actually registered, we go through lobby after lobby after lobby. The top 10 from each lobby will make it to the following pool of teams, which would be reshuffled into the next lobbies to make it through. We've narrowed it down after 5 total rounds to our final 20 teams. This time around, they will receive points along with the other 60 teams below them who made it to the semis and quarters, and we'll see that the teams that take part in this tournament today will receive these specific amounts of points. That's per player, not per team, to adjust for team shuffling, which a lot of players have been doing, which, Tom, you and I will get to talk about that in just a second. But the gaps are not that big going from, first to second or second to third. But over the course of these rounds that these teams have been grinding and grinding and grinding for the past 3 days, and you're talking about this for 4 different Challenger Cups, it really starts to stack up.
And I think that what's really important is that this is a slog, right? The reason why the points are so close between each of the places is because just making finals is an achievement. We've seen some really big names not make it here into the top 20. We've got Team Aim Assist, which has Lou Streams on it, who is one of the best Apex players in the whole region. Played for Sentinels, played for Rogue, won whole ALGS circuits. He went out in the semi-finals. We've got teams sat in the top 22 overall that went out in the quarterfinals, went out in the semi-finals. This really is an absolute slog. And, these 20 teams here that have made it, teams like Deadass, for them to just roll through these lobbies is no mean feat. And I think you cannot underestimate the confidence and the momentum that you come into. Apex is so much about being on the front foot, being aggressive, feeling like you're in control of your situations. And, if you're putting down, that many points, Deadass, Team ALGS, TSS, teams that had really, really strong semi-final showings, as we're seeing here with the standings. I think that, they're coming in, really on a high. But then at the other side, teams like, Blackhand, I loved her, Huge Brain Apes. That's sort of that rush that you get from, sneaking in, having, just those extra few points that you need, maybe having a pop-off final game. You're kind of on the same wavelength as those teams because you've got that rush. You've snuck in, you're feeling on a high, you've ended on a really good game. So it really is anybody's game today, and we've got some really fantastic teams. Which team have you got your eye on today?
I definitely several, I think, because there's a lot of in-between that I think we've neglected to mention thus far simply because of the sheer size of the pool that we're talking about. As we see these semifinals lobbies kind of rolling through, those 10 teams you saw in those previous graphics are the 10 teams that made it out of the semis lobbies, and then, of course, the 10 that lost out and were kicked off, not being able to reach that 300-point cusp that every team moving forward will get at least per player. And like you said, a couple of teams that deserve some mention, Litecoin, who is definitely going on because of their ability to win a previous Challenger Cup, not making it through. I'm not gonna lie, Tom, I was practicing my surprised face when Blackhand would inevitably eat up the lobby for the umpteenth time and make it to the finals very easily, but they did not do that. They came into the semis and got 10th in the lobby. They almost did not make it this far, even though they are currently sitting in first for total points before the finals cutoff. They will be even higher up on the cusp after this, and that's not even counting the fact if they take this lobby, which seems harder than ever, because you have these other teams like Deadass who've been starting to eat up these lobbies, and truth be told, that is the team I have my eye on more than anybody else. And I'll tell you why, because when I was watching the Challenger Cup throughout all of these other days so far this event, Deadass was always the team that I ended up watching, not because I chose to, but because every streamer I was watching ended up having to go to a kill feed that was following Deadass. That's just how dominant they were in these lobbies, and yet they may not still be the biggest enigma here. Teams like Orglis, Huge Brain Apes, I Loved Her, Blips, nay, inconsistencies, hell, irrelevancies in the leaderboard right now. Some have big fat goose eggs on their total point tallies right now, and yet here they are, coming out, coming hot, trying to lock in those final spots for the Pro League qualifier, which are still so tight, guarded by an unfortunately, I think, already booted out Team Revenge, just missing out on that border.
I think that you've raised a really good point with those teams that have, the big fat zeros next to their name. If you win the lobby today, you're automatically in that Pro League qualifier. If you're a brand new formed team, or you're a team that, hasn't quite worked it out in the previous 3 weeks, win it, you're in. You get a shot to make Pro League. You get a shot then potentially to even qualify for the LAN in London, the second London LAN. So it really is all to play for. I've got my eye on two teams today. Infiltration, because I think that a team with Taxi on it, you have to have an eye on, both for his fantastic abilities and, let's say, his personality. And then I'm also keeping my eye on the Crypt. I think that they're playing a really interesting composition, especially on World's Edge. The Loba, Valk, and Newcastle is one of those compositions that it kind of makes sense on paper, and you think, well, why aren't more teams running it, in the Pro League? You tend to see a lot more Loba, Valk, and Watson. So the sort of swap out with that Newcastle, I think, gives them a really interesting dynamic, because you're kind of making the choice there. Instead of having that Watson generator to give you your shields and to keep your shield economy healthy through the game, instead they're bringing in Loba. Obviously, with her black market, you put a market down, you can, snag all the cells in the nearby areas. And it means that they have, they have a challenge there. I've been watching them scrim a lot. Shout out to Vize for organizing some fantastic Challenger Circuit scrims using the match point format. They have got this challenge really in the first sort of couple of zones, because they have to get to the spot they want, they have to hold it down, and then with Loba you kind of have to bide your time, you have to wait, because as more teams come into the area, as teams fight on the edge of zone around you, you're then using your black market to sort of, snag shields, snag loot, snag ammo, to really then have a sort of a really strong endgame performance. So if the Crypt can sort of get in the spot that they want, if they can, nestle down with Newcastle, put a wall down, make themselves nice and secure, maybe snag some kills on the way. I think Charge Rifle's great with Loba, because you just keep absorbing all the ammo in the vicinity and pick up kills across the map. So if they can really get locked in, because they're one of those teams right on the bubble, just above Team Revenge that you shouted out earlier for not quite making it, going out in the quarterfinals, the pressure is on them, right? And I think that teams in that area who don't have that sort of the knowledge that even if they have a bad day, they're going to still be at least in the losers bracket. If the Crypt don't perform today and a team that is on 0 points wins, that might just push them out, because they're going to be stealing one of those 22 spots and pushing them down and raising that threshold. So I'm really keeping my eye on them to perform.
That's a great point. The Crypt's going to become these makeshift gatekeepers should these no-name teams, pun not intended, decide to pop off. And I'm glad that World's Edge comp seems so tantalizing to you, Tom, because that's where we're heading first. The first 3 games today, going to be going to World's Edge, then we'll go to Storm Point after that. The point system, of course, the amount of points from Challenger Cups given to teams depends on placement throughout the finals and the events beforehand, and the placement received on the finals today also depends on points, just a different system, one that you may be a little more familiar with. The classic placement plus that 1 point per KP added on to get those extra points that a lot of teams have really been suckling on, especially in the earlier rounds where those lobbies have just been absolutely devoured. But As always, 12 for first, 9 for second, 7 for third, etc., and so forth, and that carries over the course of these 6 games. No match point in sight, it's just about the final tally at the end, and that one team who sits at the top, regardless of point total, will make it to the Pro League qualifier. But Tom, like we said before, that doesn't entirely matter as much as point totals that you're receiving in the first place, because regardless of whether or not you lock in a spot from these Challenger Cups, your placement in the Pro League, winner's bracket and loser's bracket, is dependent on your point total. That's why we see teams like GOW, who are currently sitting just above the top 50 spot, even though they've won a Challenger Cup, still in this finals lobby because they want those points, they want those top areas, they want an easier path to the event that they've already guaranteed a spot for.
Yeah, I think GOW, a really interesting team, because there was some confusion in the community about what happens if you win a Challenger circuit. Do you go straight into that winner's bracket? Do you go into that loser's bracket? And the answer eventually we got, well, it actually depends on where you stand in the overall standings. You know, some teams kind of thought, oh, hang on a minute, we're not straight into the winner's bracket. So you see teams like GOW obviously having just brought in Retzi, you know, another really decorated and experienced player. I think for them, to get into that winner's bracket now is going to take something really special as we see the teams start to drop in here. But I think for them, this is almost like a scrim, really. They know they're in the PLQ. They're playing with a new player, Retzi, in this team. And for them, I think this is just working out, seeing how it works. You know, there's no better practice than a Challenger Circuit final.
Maybe good for them to have a little less pressure going into this matchup, because I believe that according to the spots that were claimed going into this lobby, GOW may have the only early contest in the entire lobby with Team ALGS over in Lava Siphon, which happens to be the hot drop here for game number 1 on World's Edge. It's happening, people. We got it started. Game number 1 in the Challenger Cup number 4 finals. One team is guaranteed a spot in the Pro League at the end of tonight, and 18 will follow in their footsteps once the tallies have concluded. GOW already trying to loot up, and in they go into the contest against Team ALGS, and Mellows is the first to fall for it.
I think Lava Siphon is just one of those interesting points of interest, because you can split this, but why would a team like GOW want to split it? You know, they've already qualified. As we've said, you know, they are thinking, you know, long term, right? They want to make sure that any teams that think about landing with them, no, you land here, we're running at you, we're killing you, this is our spot, we want on the rotations. Why would you want to contest a team that has literally nothing to lose?
Well, looks like Doctona is going to debate with themselves over relegating that spot. Might just have to rat it out for the lobby, and may have to continue being the case for these next 3 games unless ALGS decides to head to another spot. But the problem with that is all the other spots have already been claimed. 2 snipers in hand, 1 with energy ammo, and Doct is doing some damage, but with 3 POV away, Team ALGS is the first team to fall here in game 1.
And now it'll be that really interesting discussion for Team ALGS. You know, are you putting that down to maybe, you know, some bad RNG? I've contested POIs where you land on a P20 in a Mozambique and you're kind of thinking, hang on a minute, I could definitely win that next time. So will they go back? Will they keep fighting? Are they going to recognize that GOW are a team that, like I said, doesn't have anything to lose? As we look at Team Positive Entropy here, they're another team that have that 0 point. You know, they are playing for the win today. Easy Potatoes definitely got, you know, experience in making it deep into Challenger circuits, but it just hasn't quite come off for him this year so far. So they're playing for the win, and that makes a really interesting decision tactically for a team. Do you play cautiously? Do you play like most teams will in a high situation? You know, not take too many risks and try to make the end game, or do you accept that actually they need to put down some serious points if they want to make it into that Pro League qualifier?
They do have a bit of a luxury considering the fact that they are coming into this with, in fact, after the immediate 900 that the team will get after this event guaranteed at least, that is ahead of Revenge's final score. So as of now, it's kind of up in the air. But Positive Entry, they do currently have a little bit of a cushion to work with in the match, but evidently in this circle, as they've been able to rotate up to the southern end of that first ring pretty quickly and easily without too much contesting the rest of the teams attempting to do so. We don't have too many edge teams, I think, in this lobby, although that does remain to be seen depending on the chemistry that comes between this lobby, because again, I do believe we have 5 teams in this lobby that have never made a final before, and so everybody is kind of trekking into uncharted territory. GOW, of course, obviously the first to be able to do so with Team ALGS, but looks like we have a lot more action heading on over in Skyhook. Most of the lobby has already made their way over there, and it looks like some pot shots getting taken on all sides. A lot of damage getting done, but nothing decisive just yet.
Yeah, I think that Skyhook endings are, you know, one of the in the game for excitement, for holding down buildings. A team I loved her here getting 3 nice and easy kills, and I'm assuming getting the spot that they wanted. I'm assuming that they either have successfully defended the spot or have successfully just taken the spot. Meanwhile, Team Intel under a little bit of pressure here. Flins are already on the ground. Are they going to get pushed? It looks like they are by We The People, Taxi, and DivQ, one of the most aggressive teams. This is going to be a really early fight here. Going to play lots of other teams pressuring them. They've managed to get their thirst. They're backing off. They're going back to their spot. I think that's a really great decision.
This is going to be that litmus test for infiltration. Currently 42nd going into today's finals after all the other teams out of the finals lobby had their points tacked on. And this is like you said, provide a lot of room for teams to sort of just brandish how they're going to play this out. The teams hungrier for kill, desperate to make those steps up. They don't have that luxury that other teams in this may have as much, like Blackhand, and so you'll see a couple teams flounder in the white buildings. Intel gonna have to be one of those teams in a hybrid style, as Flinzar is down, so it's a 2 versus the world for the time being, with a solid building intact and also the follow-up ring available. Team Intel has technically a lot to work with. It's just still so up in the... And there's one of those Lobas you were talking about as well, Tom. Those black markets, I expect to see bevy of them, especially in Skyhook.
And here we are, another early game fight here. And hey, really, some serious Soros are going to try and fight for this train station. I think that, is that a Valkyrie just landed nearby? I think I heard somebody landing. I think that is the risk, right? If you're fighting really early, yeah, you can see a team has taken the roof there. It looks like Blackhand taking the roof.
That's Blackhand.
And right, fighting early, you put that Seer exhibit down. You're basically saying, land here, you could get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kills and a really good spot in zone. So it's all about that, that sort of risk factor. You've got to establish, is this worth it? Is the risk worth the kills at this point? Obviously, each kill worth a point. Doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're placing 7th with 0 kills, you're getting 3 points. If you can wipe one squad, you're getting the exact same points. And then any placement there is just a bonus. So racking up those early game kills can be a really, really great thing to do if you want to push up that leaderboard and make as many points as you can towards the overall standings.
A lot of assessment Asuras especially has to do here. Able to play that high ground, but not necessarily going to take it as much. Just going to try and make sure that anybody in the vicinity is a little bit detained. But with the Watson online, the pylon still rocking, maybe a little bit more difficult, especially with Blackhand upstairs now. No Name may be walled out, and that's one down. Gyozy and Denpride now alone in the middle of it all, about to get sandwiched, but a laser from Gyozy may save the day. No shields on either end. Gyozy still getting fired upon. It's so terrifying when the sightlines can just keep getting invaded, and now the fences. No attention has to be paid for them. No Name's gonna fall, and Asuras can take the ground. Blackhand gets punished for taking that high ground as well, and so now Asuras stand alone for the time being in a pretty safe spot.
That is just that's a fighting in zone moment for you right there. The second you peek out, everybody's looking, everybody's posted up. Joey using the 30-30 repeater, a really strong long-range weapon. Everybody's posted up, but meanwhile, on the edge, we've got Gears of War, fighting on the edge in
It is a Game of War, isn't it?
It's a Game of War?
It is. It is a game. It is Gears of War, but this is a Game of War. As this is 2 big dogs. This is Deadass versus GOW, a team that won their finals lobby and has had consistently the top 3 kills out of literally any Challenger Cup, essentially, versus a team that is kind of floundered outside of the Challenger Cup that they've won. Both teams showing exemplary performance in different areas, but Deadass has just been a little more consistent, and that will not change just yet. GOW is going to fall in 15th. I
think seeing GOW play on the edge of zone, I think really adds an extra dynamic to the the early game contest, because if you're trying to play zone and you want to really early rotate, taking the time to have to contest your POI is a real negative, but I think they're definitely not going to be leaving that spot in a hurry if they're happy to play edge from Lava Siphon, because they can take their time, they can fight, so it'll be really interesting to see if they get challenged again next game. But here we are in Skyhook. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about Diff Q there. We can just see him, chilling in his building, set up. He's known for mostly his time in the EMEA region. He relocated to North America. He's not quite broken into the top tier of North American Apex yet, but on the Solo Q Goats team, when they played in the EMEA Pro League, they had a really clear identity. We're pushing something, we're using Bangalore, obviously Shiv FPS, the Bangalore. I think Shiv is Bangalore. I'm convinced that they're somehow related. And we see him here in Skyhook, his old drop spot. He must be feeling at home, but you don't think you can overestimate what it's like as a player to have someone that has that much experience in those key moments, especially when you're IGLing. What I think the polite way to put it, some big personalities there with We the People and Taxi, right? These are players that they know what they're doing. They're playing solo. And I think it takes an IGL as experienced as DiffQ to sort of command that respect and keep those guys in line, which is exactly what we saw earlier in the game when they had that knock. They could have chosen to fully engage in that fight and maybe get thirded, maybe get picked off like we saw happen to Blackhand, like we saw happen to other teams that have tried to fight in Skyhook when we had that mass exodus just a few minutes ago. So, I think that his experience is really paying off for them right now, and they're in a really good position for this zone.
A lot of early circle action here, but of course, with Skyhook, you have those building covers, so might be a little bit of lull in the action outside of some occasional pot shots. The same cannot be said for Revival Games, who's been playing the long game, playing a lot of edge, and has now run into Risen Rose over here on Countdown, and there's the Banga ult already popped up as Revival is able to fade away against Risen Rose, walking into each other, but the high ground still has to be contested here, and now the exhibit's going to be able to come out. Still a lot of time that Risen Rose may be able to play with, and a lot of spaces. Saz gets lasered during the ultimate. That's a lot of time already wasted during a crucial moment, and Prophet will fall next. Revival Games are choking on the distance, and Prophet has been punished for it. Saz and Shiny may have to just run it, but Risen Rose, they want to run it down. They want to keep hunting this. They want to keep looking for RG and grab that first clump of KP that a couple teams have already gotten a hold of. Able to find a little bit of damage, but Revival, luckily, able to find a lot of distance so far, and does have a lot of space to play with on this southeastern edge of the enclosing ring. And so, if need be, Revival can get out of here, or at least what's left of them, but I don't think they want to leave this alone just yet. Risen Rose has a lot of weak spots still open, especially in their position, that they really still haven't taken over from Revival. So this is still very much up in the air.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see here if Revival, go for a Revival. Are they going to try and get that banner? It looks like they're just leaving. It looks like they're just saying, you know what, fair enough, we're out. And I think that that was a really interesting 3v3 there, because you've got on one hand, you've got Bangalore with Bloodhound, which is a really, really popular combination right now, not just in the NA region, but all across Apex at the moment. But then on the other hand, you've got the sort of the same thing, but with a bit of a twist, with a bit of a change. Sia and Bangalore. And I think that both of them have their merits, both of them have their weaknesses. I think that the real advantage of Bloodhound is how easily digestible the information is. If you're rocking up, say, we're seeing Revival Games now rotating into Skyhook, they're going to think, well, we need a spot to play. You press one button on your keyboard or on your controller, you can see 7 or 8 buildings. Which ones are free? And speaking of buildings that aren't free here, we're with the Azuras, and we are once again fighting in Skyhook. The zone is looking like it's going to pull right onto this building, so if you can lock down this position, you're going to be in a great spot for the endgame.
And Azuras may not be able to lock it down in time, but Uriel Beam coming back down to the low ground, launching out a lot of damage from the lower door, and Azuras able to play with this high ground for at least the time being. Couple shield swaps in tandem as well, and of course, being able to stay beefy here will keep them in the fight. A lot of intel coming in at this point. Again, no pun intended, as these last couple circles hand over a lot of limited loot with the black markets that they're running, but Azuras, they have to encroach, and I Loved Her are going to be the victims of Azuras up next. That's a really solid amount of KP that Azuras is up to, 4 to be exact, and with 13 squads left, they are trying to make some waves already here in game number 1. And now, come the stragglers to Skyhook. Unfortunately, Shinny is a part of that squad, and now Revival is only one strong. It was Deadass this time, a team that has been playing even farther from the edge because they kind of have the luxury to as well, considering their already really comfortable spot. And only now will they try and decide to pop off after taking down GOW, after taking down one more. They are also now at 4 KP and also have a building in this next circle to boot.
Yeah, they've walked into zone right at the perfect time. They're going to be absolutely delighted with that. Yeah, fairly easy KP. They've chosen not to just chase, and instead we're going to be deploying that charge rifle with a 3x just to do some big damage. The amount of space that you can control when you have a charge rifle, when you have Bangalore ult, when you have Bangalore smokes, and you can see just how much space here they're working with. They're in multiple buildings. They're controlling the whole south side of Skyhook right now, and they're not afraid of getting involved and doing some damage.
It's great seeing them constantly just try and get that poke in, just make sure that every team is in a weaker state than they are. Really see them firing on all cylinders. Going back over to Risen Rose's journey up to the southern end of this upcoming circle, they don't really have a lot to contest just yet, but their building is noticeably in a much worse spot than these upcoming circles. They're going to get dragged potentially more than anybody, save for possibly Stormtroopers, who, two of those guys, stuck in an unfortunate spot as well. Buff Pathfinder deciding to make some headway over to the follow-up building. Bursty gonna scope out this low ground, some early damage found, and with the help of the exhibit, they know that they can move in anytime. There's the immediate drop down, and a lot of early damage coming their way. Buff Pathfinder, though, now getting thrown in on a black hole, and now have to set up for the low ground recontesting. It's clear their opponents are willing to do that if need be, if possible, even. And that's infiltration up on that higher ground, trying to find a way through. Something has got to crack. It doesn't have to be now, though. There is still a lot of time left on this round, and both these teams can just take a step back, analyze the situation again, and then maybe come back in a second, or they can just fight it out 2 more times right now if they wanted to.
We can see here, I think one of the teams with one of the strongest spots there, Kalando and Redeem, both have 2 of the most prime real estate for this zone. As we can see Crypt, I think, on a Valcourt there, moving really fast across the map. I mean, now we're going to get to the point now where you could take 2 or 3 teams in this building here. You could probably take a couple of teams in Market. You can probably take a couple of teams in the building that Redeem is sat in. But after that, there is no room in the inn, and we have 12 squads, potentially soon to be 11, looking at that kill feed. How are teams going to fight now as they all get forced in towards Market here in Skyhook? Are we going to see some crazy Valcourts? Are we going to see teams just fighting it out? Are we going to see teams coexisting? This building is becoming like a block of flats. There's that many people living in it.
Yeah, it's a huge cutoff, man. Here in the corner of that circle, it's a place that seems very appetizing to so many of these teams, but unfortunately, Risen Rose stuck on that lower ground, unable to make some headway there. Here come Deadass once again, just running through an opposing team, just deciding that this building is theirs, and already some splash damage coming through. There's the 2-man frontal assault already down to flesh on 1, now heading to the other door. The Black Market is barricaded down, and Team Intel will fall in 12th. Risen Rose finally fully falling in 11th as well. Half the lobby finally going down. Round 5 about to begin. A lot of teams about to have to make another move, and this is post several Valcults that we saw over the course of those last 3 skirmishes.
Team Intel will be sat in the lobby trying to process that one. I think what we saw there is exactly what it's like to be a zone team. If you don't quite get the building right, if you lose that protection of having teams really nearby to put pressure on an aggressor, it's really hard to fight against a team that has really strong armors, has weapons, is mentally, feeling good about their fighting and is on a roll, can bank smoke you, can bloodhound scan you, maybe they have a seer scan. So that, if you can't quite get that positioning right, and if you, aren't playing in a building where maybe you have a Watson generator or a Newcastle wall to protect you from things like grenades, we saw the ALGS there didn't really do much damage. What they did was they cleared the path for that team to, brawl their way up the stairs, get on a level playing field and make it a pure gun skill fight, which of course, team like Deadass is going to back themselves to win 10 out of 10 times.
And when it comes to comfort, Infiltration is trying to find their spot. They're in a bit of a purgatory right now with the guard dogs below them still right now in Buff Pathfinder. Both of these teams are going to have to move in a second, and it's going to be Infiltration that pops that trigger first. Have a lot of ults available, including the Skyward Dive, and they're going to let that fly now. Head on over to the circle. A lot of other teams, including TSS, as well as Positive Entropy also making their way down. There's a fight on the ground in the meantime, though, indeed, between TSS and Positive Entropy. They've met halfway, and 2 of Positive Entropy has already fallen. Jimothy is on flesh, but so are 2 of the members of TSS, but they have that time, that luxury, to be able to take that cover back, and they'll be able to find the rest of Positive Entropy, finding those KP. Infiltration post-landing will also be falling, and TSS about to run into a second fight. Meanwhile, Asuris still playing the guard dogs, trying to head back inside circle after a faulty representation inside this building. They're going to be able to make a bit of a breakthrough as the crypt falls up next, but a lot of fences to clear out and a whole lot of teams stuck inside this final circles building.
And we've got an EMP coming in. You know, just going to slow this fight down. Asuris playing as a duo, but look at the aggression they're able to put on because they're on that front foot, because they have that momentum, because they have that information from the Bloodhound scan. They're feeling confident, you know, even though they're a man down, they have that knock. They're just going to keep the pressure on. They're right at the back of zone, so they're not really getting angled out from any of the teams because they're protected by that wall. And here's the last guy of Stormtroopers. He's forging his own path there. Not going to quite make it, and TSS are picking up another kill. They've made it out. I was worried that Hambino might die to zone, but it looks like he's made it. And we've now got several teams fighting around this building, several teams fighting around Market.
It looks like a lot of teams are trying to finish this out now as Redeem falls up next. Das still spraying and Kalando falling as well. A lot of teams attempting to come out of the woodwork. TSS, the only one still alive now, up against Deadass as Hambino shreds the remainder of the third place team. Banga ult out the gate, and TSS sees no better time than now to reaggress before the death boxes can come through, before the resurgence can come on, before Deadass can truly become what they are meant to be. TSS has to guard this building with their lives, and unfortunately, Boop is not going to be one of them. Go next, though. It's a trade against Blur Flavors as the rest of Deadass attempts to instigate in this top right building, but it's a temporary split from the action as the floors are separated, but the rotation is going to have to come through. This circle is going to encroach, and Deadass has the better sightline at the moment.
That was some crazy aggression. I was literally just about to say, neither team really has an advantage in positioning. The zone's heading right in the middle. You see Hambino not quite winning his trade. Can Blur close it out? He cannot, and Deadass continue exactly where they left off in the semi-finals. Rolling the lobby, aggression, 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 and that has led to yet another victory for Team Deadass.
I mean, when it comes to consistency, I think this team is its representation here in the Challenger Cup this split. They have just been so present throughout this entire event. It's a miracle they haven't won one of these cups yet, but it looks like Deadass trying to make this one their dub, and this is a great way to start it out. I think at the quarters at one point they got like 78 kills this time around. I mean, the numbers that they put up are absolutely nutty, and this time is no different. 14 kills on the up and up out of just game 1, tacked on to the 12 for the victory. That is 26 on the pedestal to kick tonight off in favor of Deadass. An absolutely incredible performance from them the whole way through.
I'm pretty sure that those 76 kills that they got in one of those earlier rounds is more kills than I've ever had in ALGS in my entire career. I mean, that is just crazy. What I think is working really well for them, and what I find really interesting, is the no Valk. You know, look, Valk is a great legend for competitive. Her Skyward Dive, one of the best abilities I think ever put into the game for a competitive environment. But there's a mental thing, right? Because you might have to take a tricky fight, you might have to push something. But if you have that Skyward Dive, you can just kind of, you know, not sort of duck out of it, but you have another option. Whereas a team like Deadass just has to fight their way in. And when you have their team fighting skills that they do, and when you clearly have that momentum that I talked about, you know, they're on a roll from yesterday, they're feeling really good in their 3v3s, you know, being forced to take those fights by the legends you choose, and obviously having that Bangalore, having that Bloodhound, a great combination for fighting, easy information, using those smokes, scanning through them, one-clipping people through the smoke, just absolutely perfect. And we're going to see here, you know, back to that fight in Harvester. What a great start there that was for, you know, all of these edge teams really fighting. And what was interesting about this lobby is I think that there was a real good mix of, you know, teams that are really trying to play in the zone, and teams that are playing on the edge. And it means that, you know, for those, when you're a zone team, right, you want other zone teams. That is such a key part of being a zone team, is that teams cannot fight you, you know, without consequences, right? We saw right at the beginning teams dying purely for landing on top of another team, you know, fighting an isolated fight, and you're on characters like Loba, like Hassel. You don't have that aggressive power. You don't have a character that is, you know, going to give you a scan, for example. You know, there's nothing like a scan to help you in a fight. Easy info. You can swing someone, exactly where they are. So I think we're set for a really, really good, set of 6 games today with this perfect balance of teams.
TSS able to grab second place thanks to the second place finish in the lobby. On top of those 8 kills that they grabbed, Team Intel was able to get 4 before falling through. They are going to come out of this with 5 points total. Gonna grab 9th place going into game number 2. Crypt was able to get a point tacked on as well. They'll go in with a little bit. Black Hand, though, poor guys, could not catch a break today. But I will say, on the topic of compositions, I think you touched on it really well, but lack of Valkyrie, addition of Loba, whatever you want to call it, I think a lot of teams are starting to accept how ubiquitous fights and loot are compared to cover. And that's why I think Valkyrie has sort of taken a slight step back because of the nerfs, partially with the Skyward Dive in particular, I think, as well as obviously the tactical nerfs, but also just the rise of how well other characters can fare, in fights outside of circles like everybody's favorite in Skyhook. Because Valkyrie has to deal with a lot of natural cover when Skyward Diving, and deadass, they got to play with that to the moon and back. They got to run with all of that open space and take advantage of it every single time. But the question is that in a vacuum? Because we've seen deadass completely drop the ball in one game after absolutely tearing it up the next. It's actually more of a trend than their consistency in finishing when it comes to Challenger Cups. And so I'm interested in seeing if that lack of Valkyrie is a continuation because of how well they played in this game, or if the lack of Valkyrie will falter here because the circle may take them somewhere where Valkyrie may fare even better.
Yeah, I think that is a benefit to having Valkyrie on the edge, and one of those things that a team like Deadass will have thought about is sometimes you can just run into 3 teams. There can be you, there can be 2 other teams pinching you, and how do you get out of that? If you win your 3v3, you're probably still going to get thirded, and unless you do something absolutely crazy, you're probably still going to die. You'll take the 3 points, maybe 4 if you've made it into the the top 15, but you can sometimes just save yourself with that Valkyrie ultimate. So it makes I think Valkyrie much reduces the risk of taking all these fights on edge, but having a character like Horizon where you've got that grab lift that I don't think's talked about enough in terms of its ability to get in the air, get a sightline on someone behind a rock, and then absolutely, just deliver big damage from the sky and really make that opening.
Whatever teams play, however teams play, we know they're going to keep trying to play their best. The action isn't done yet, guys. Mellocrit and Porosaurus are going to take over for us for game number 2. We'll be headed back to World's Edge after this short break.
Well, hello, everybody. It is I, Porosaurus, it is Team Melocrit, and we are getting ready for game number 2 of tonight's Apex Legends Global Series Challenger Circuit. Melocrit, and one game in, and we saw Deadass just kind of W key their way through the whole lobby, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely on brand for that squad. We saw them do it in the previous Challenger circuit. I mean, they're just willing to take any fight, push down any building, especially some of those skyhook buildings, man. It is tough to hold with a lot of those open windows and so many teams looking your way. In the end, they do a fantastic job of capitalizing on a lot of mistakes, using that insane loot to their advantage. And of course, that 3v3 is just something else. But taking a really quick look again at that leaderboard, I did want to highlight some teams because you definitely shouted some out. No time for that. No time for leaderboards. We're going straight in. A team I definitely want to shout out, though, because you mentioned it, and that was actually Risen Rose. I love the way that they're playing. They're playing with some serious confidence that I think that we haven't been seeing in a lot of the other challenger circuits. But they also displayed, I think, one of the critical issues that happens in some of these lobbies, and that is that one mistake walking into those late game rings will absolutely demolish your game. They came in after a really great fight against RG, and it seemingly just... it's almost like they forgot they were running that seer, or they just didn't hit the scan. They didn't use the passive before walking up into that building where we saw infiltration holding for a large chunk of the time, and ultimately it punished them in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, you heard the guys talking about it there during game 1. Coming into Skyhook late is often a pretty difficult feat, I guess, unless your name is Deadass. They didn't seem to have any problems with it whatsoever. But it's one of those things, man, where you feel like you get all those teams all on top of each other, multiple layers, a lot of vertical play there, as we see another fight here between GOW. Early game, is this no org again?
Yeah, I believe so. That's going to be Orgless, and they're trying to make an argument for getting picked up, and the first step is obviously taking down GOW, our Challenger Circuit 1 winners, back here with Retzi as a third. And looking all right for the time being, pretty even though, 1 knock apiece. Holding that door and just trying to hold on. This is the difficulty with those early 1v1s, is you're scrapping with so little resources on both sides, and it comes down to RNG picking up an empty L-Star, excuse me. Retzi trying to find some damage, trying to put down that thermite to bleed them out a little bit more, but just not quite finding it.
Yeah, it's a little bit rough here for GOW, as it almost feels like they're trying to bait the push out from Orgless here, and they're going to get it now as the push comes through. Retzi's ready and waiting, and they'll find 2 just like that, as Orgless falling right into the trap of GOW.
Oh man, Retzi, they're going with the aerial kicks to try and finish it off. 0 bullets on the Hemlock, and pretty much nothing left on that L-Star, but who needs them when you've got the big... I was going to say Fist of Fury, but I guess that was all toes, so good job on GOW, and that's going to be 2-0.
You got them steel-toed Doc Martens on, man. He's already just right to the jaw there for Retzi. But this is now 2 in a row for Orgless. They got 1 more to play here before moving over to World's Edge. So we'll see how they decided to approach this in game number 3. But once again, points picked up early for GOW. See if they can make something out of it this time.
Yeah, and something else that's, again, pretty on brand. GOW here coming back with a very aggressive composition. They're willing to play aggressive. They're fighting for that POI to pick up 3 early KP, but it's likely they'll pick up quite a bit more. Again, in their first challenger showing, they showed that they are willing to take those 3v3s constantly. So maybe with that Retzi buff, even more confident in doing exactly that. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. Taking a quick look, though, over towards Fragment and a couple of other squads that are starting to look each other's way, and I think all of the teams now have sort of started to make their decisions about where they want to walk, as this ring is pulling a little bit more towards the eastern side, still pretty far north. Could potentially be pulling their way up towards Epicenter, yet to be seen, though, as that ring 2 information that is so critical. Only a couple of teams have that, and Huge Brain Apes might be one of those teams. They're actually running the crypto for the extra info, deep zone comp, so they might know something we don't.
Yeah, they seem to have spotted somebody out here. Not really in a hurry to make a move just yet. Just a few casual shots over just to break a couple shields, and Gengar will pull right back away. As huge brand names, as you said, we did get a chance to see Hambino and the boys, and got a little bit of a look there into Infiltration. Infiltration, another team that you definitely had your eyes on coming into this one. Looked good in the game one. Looked pretty aggro, to be honest, and kind of pulled back a little bit towards the late game, and kind of got picked apart one by one, nickel and dimed, as it were, over there in Skyhook, which does tend to happen. But good signs early on here for Infiltration.
Yeah, Infiltration, they did tune up the aggression, but I loved how they pulled it back, they dialed it back, and they had a POI that was relative close to those late game rings, so no point in getting too crazy with it because they knew they were going to get value eventually. Maybe lost out on some value by pulling back on the aggression, but ultimately when you're trying to scrap together points, a lot of the times that late game, that placement point is what ends up counting the most. Stormtroopers fighting for their lives at this point, already losing one member in Oi Senpai on the floor, just trying to do what they can to recover, to hold down this RV. Even if it's with a duo, they will continue to survive for the time being, but it's running late, putting on the pressure.
Yeah, I don't know how much pressure running late seems to really be putting on here. I think they had ideas, and maybe those ideas got taken away, although
maybe an EMP on the horizon.
Yeah, still seems like he's interested here, but running late, it almost feels like a split call here, doesn't it? I mean, you've got Defeated kind of holding down the north side of the tunnel, where the south side, yep, now the third party's coming in. Okay, they might pull off of that altogether here as we see where this next circle is going. It's starting to get a little bit more compact, a little bit crowded there, just south of Epicenter.
Yeah, and I think it might have been Tom who shouted out, there are quite a few teams that are liking the early rotates right now. We saw Skyhook heavily populated early on, and now we actually get to watch Infiltration kind of play to what I assumed was more their style, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more edge fighting. So because they are dropping in trials, they have quite a ways to walk, so they are soaking up resources all throughout the edge of the map, making sure that they are kitted up for that first fight.
Here's another team that definitely caught my eye there in game number one. Asuras playing with some heavy aggression here, as they've already popped the Bloodhound ult, and doesn't look like they're too terribly interested in full pressing that. But all throughout game one, the fight selection from Asuras was just, I mean, it was chef's kiss. It was top tier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way that they held that spot in that train station just long enough to do the damage that they needed to get that knock, and ultimately that knock came from across the way, across the POI, but yeah, just selectively pressuring, putting on little by little, just laying it on constantly so that eventually something broke and they were able to capitalize. Right now, actually, the team that found that knock that helped out Asaurus is the team getting taken out, redeemed, kind of caught in the middle of no man's land with so many teams looking their way, and that's going to be an early knockout for them.
Sure is. And interestingly enough, we talked about the early rotations last time. I felt like there was about 7 or 8 teams that tried to do the long wrap around on the north side of Skyhook, and I think maybe a few of those teams learned their lesson and said, look, this north side is so compact, so many teams up here. Let's not try to do that this time. Well, now those teams have to go somewhere else. And it looks like they're falling on top of each other here on the eastern side of the circle and the southern side of the circle. North side, pretty clean, all things considered. Now, there are still a number of teams that are making their way in here, but still some time to go here as we check in with GOW. Looks like they're just getting aggravated here by Deadass.
Yeah, and I was saying earlier that this is such a complicated position for both teams because GOW loves to fight. Deadass obviously loves to fight. And we even have RG waiting in the wings. So now the push from GOW might make or break this fight. But the third party is so close by. We can see that on the map, but they definitely can't. Deadass trying to clean this up, but already losing Orioles and are actually getting smoked from across the way as well. So it's just getting more and more difficult. And finally, those ultimates are starting to come down from those Bangalores, and they see it. RG was there, but was the timing there? It doesn't look like it was quite right, and they're pulling off.
And somehow Deadass manages to pull away from this, keeping all 3 up. Although Revival, they still want a piece. Nice shots coming in from Sauce. He'll have to pull back down, though, as he gets spotted out. The Bangalore smoke slowing things down a little bit here, as Revival trying to recoup, and Shiny's going to get taken down. Prophet's going to go down as well, as the push coming through. Deadass not wasting any time turning the tables here.
Oh man, Revival Games just barking up the wrong tree at the wrong time. It looked like it had potential. It looked like GOW was going to pressure Deadass into a horrible scenario, but somehow they get that res off, and ultimately GOW gets away with their lives, and only one member turned into a death box, and they're actually going to go probably look to stick that somewhere else, but somehow, some way, Deadass continues to find value.
I mean, just they had no business winning that fight. No business coming out on top of that. No business coming out on top of that with all three alive either. But just dead-ass things here so far through 2 games. We'll see if they can keep it going through the end now. As we check in with TSS, engaging in a little bit of a scrap here. Nobody going down. Looks like the commit not coming full just yet, as they're just kind of toying with each other more than anything.
Yeah, and it's actually incredibly complicated too, because you want to take, you know, you mentioned it earlier, there's some fights that you feel like you want to take, that you need to take, because you need to clear up space as the rings close smaller and smaller. So trying to squeeze value out of those zone spots, it's important to be proactive, but also you can't expose yourself too much to all of the other squads. You see there up on the ridge, a team that has LOS, obviously a team up on that sniper tower, a team in the building, a team deep in Overlook. I mean, the angles are just all over the place. Team Intel finding some nice angles onto running late, and they're completely demolished inside this truck.
Very clean, very quick done there from Intel. This will get back into the hard cover. Get a little bit of a reset going on. Risen Rose, meanwhile, still leave down to 2, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, nope, they got all 3 up. Not all 3 on screen, but they are back to full strength. And just kind of working their way around the edge. They do have a team right off in the back, off in the blue, or the zone, I guess, is infiltrated. It's not got to twist it.
Yeah, but very angry.
It's very angry. Infiltration just off to the north, eating some of that damage right now, but they might be getting involved very shortly here. And yep, there they are.
Yeah, they are right on their tails, and it looked like Risen Rose was trying to lay on the pressure because they know that team was trying to deep in zone, but Asurus. Again, the timing is so difficult, and they know it. So now Asurus starting to make their way back. It looked like for a second there they might get aggressive, but I think they understand that their positioning is definitely something they don't want to give up just for a 3v3 throw, and especially if they know that there's another squad out in the zone. The fight does end up looking a little bit riskier. So again, Asurus, good fight selection here, though I do worry that as they get later and later into this ring, or into this game rather, and into this ring, they aren't really squeezing out as much value as I would like. Yet to be seen, though, because they're going to have a couple of squads to clear up on the north.
Indeed they will, and you gotta know they anticipate a few Val cults coming through here. We see one right there in the dead middle, as I believe that's Crypt coming through. I'm going to land right in the dead center. Positive Entropy, meanwhile, still holding down the hard cover tower defense, as it were.
Oh, yes.
With that
on
Watson.
Orioles, actually. So that's Deadass taking the bad side of that fight. And over on the kill feed, you can see Voltic has a Kraber in hand. Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. Always fun to watch. We have to make sure we get a little fly in onto Voltic there with that Kraber. I'm excited to see how that works out. But our game 1 winners, Deadass, now down to just Goat, and Goat kind of in a tough spot here, all things considered, as Entropy is still just holding the line, waiting to see what they can spot out.
Yeah, so for the time being, Positive Entropy does hold down this spot, but they aren't going to be able to hold it for long. And as we said earlier, we knew that this squad of Asurus was going to have to deal with some of these squads eventually, and it looks like the first one they have to deal with is Infiltration, coming out deep from the zone here, trying to lay it on, but not quite finding the angles. They're still plenty healthy, though, and they might have decent resources to work with, but look at how Asurus is just stacking the nades and stacking the damage.
Oh, my gosh. Asurus, this is, I mean, you talk about fight selection in the first place, but then you also talk about how quickly they can make short work of it. I mean, as you said, the stacking of the Valcult with the grenades, everything just going off perfectly there without a hitch. And now they can turn their attention over towards what's next. Asurus once again looking real good right now.
Yeah, and I love the way that they put on that pressure because they didn't overcommit at any point. In fact, they laid out just enough damage to set up a really great horizontal. And honestly, the only other angle they had to run was covered by a member of Asurus. So all in all, just bleeding them dry of options and ultimately getting a clean 3-man wipe onto that squad. So Infiltration made it pretty far in the previous game. Not going to do the same here in game 2.
It's a Horizon ult. I'm all confused. I'm calling things blue. I'm saying the wrong ults. I'm everywhere. I apologize, Switch that. But you know what? We are here to watch these guys. Fortunately, we're not here to judge me, right?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Hopefully. Oh, hey, no, I'm sure it's not going to happen. I'm not.
I'm here to judge you. Don't worry, Toro.
I'm glad somebody's here to call me out on my BS. Well, Goat's still alive for Deadass. And so the dream not yet dead as Trev stacks. Ooh, another Kraber on the field here. That one's going to fall just a little bit short. We can wish he had that one back.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. But sometimes the presence alone of that Kraber, you hear a Kraber shot, and suddenly you are not picking a single thing anywhere.
I know, right? It just changes. It just changes the way everybody around plays. Once you hear that big boy, you start second guessing everything you're about to do. There's a push coming through from Asurus. They've lost 2. Uriel, the last one up, and he's going to win it. Asurus once again. They will lose 1 this time, but Thalos will get back up on his feet. And yep, they're going to be back up to full strength. There you go. Easy
yeah,
peasy.
And that gold knockdown there, getting full value out of it too. That's so. I mean, again, we've said it multiple times, but Asurus in their fight selection, now that they've killed that team, now they committed to that. For one, probably had a pretty decent idea of how isolated that fight was going to be, and 2, now they control that entire northern side. I mean, with the exception of maybe one squad, I think it's I loved her that might be looking their way. They have this whole north side to themselves, and hey, they might find another 3v3 here. We know Risen Rose is somewhere in the vicinity as well, so again, just squeezing out value from their positioning. That is the name of the game. Asurus is doing a great, fantastic job of that right now.
Absolutely. It's yeah, I mean, I think especially, I'm not sure who the IGL is for Asurus, but you gotta have that internal clock going to let you know, hey, this fight is taking too long, or we got about 20-25 seconds to pull this off without worrying about getting third partied, and they are sticking to that right now. As TSS looks like they have a little bit of an idea of what's going on around them, but not exactly ideal Watson territory up here, but they're gonna make it work.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I mean, sometimes those generators can hold out just enough angles for you to survive. GOW finally going to get eliminated. They got away from one sticky situation, but the crit was not going to let them get away with another. And I believe that's going to be the only Newcastle I've seen so far in this lobby. The composition here matched up with the Loba. Again, I'm not the biggest proponent of Newcastle, and questionable on Loba, but again, for the time being, they're holding on strong, though. We'll see if they can continue surviving. They don't have a Watson to deal with these nades, but hey, a car seat sometimes does just as well from the looks of it.
Yeah, I mean, they don't look like they're in great shape, but they are still alive, and that's what matters right now. Yeah, I mean, look, I keep getting told that Newcastle is a thing that's able to be worked, but I gotta tell you, man, I have not seen it work out too well here so far. As that's gonna be a nice shot from Trev Stacks. Takes that one down. Vize, can they get him back up? Trev Stacks. What's the angle Trev Stacks here? I can't even see.
Oh man, this is where it starts to get tough too, because I mean, pushing that can completely expose you to all of the other squads that are around, though. I'm not gonna lie, Poro, this is looking like a slightly emptier World's Edge than you might expect, though. It's pretty on par with what we saw last time. 9 squads here rolling into ring number 5, closing in about 15 seconds. So all the squads here that have taken up early residence are gonna be feeling pretty happy, because they're not gonna be dealing with pushes from the likes of Risen Rose.
Yeah, and there we go. This is what we wanted to see, that late game Risen Rose. They've kind of developed a reputation as being a team that kind of hangs out, plays things slow for the early and mid game, tries to get it going there in the late game, and now is when they should be popping off, and now they are, as they'll find Asurus and they'll get back up to full strength.
Yeah, that's great. Huge value for them because now they're the ones that own the north side of the map, and they are still in ring as opposed to the likes of teams like a No Name right now that has a member down and the ring quickly closing behind them. And just look at how little space there is to work it with. Look at the LOS from all of these squads that they have right on them. Just one final truck to hold onto a scrap of space, but it is not going to be what they need to survive. No Name is eliminated. We are down from 9 to 5 in the blink of an eye, Boro.
Just like Dolly Parton said, 9 to 5. It's tough. TSS has a nice spot with the high ground right now. They're just kind of ADR farming. As I mean, I think maybe Risen Rose might have an angle on them. That's about it. Team Intel, meanwhile, is just ducking and bobbing and weaving and trying to avoid the shots there from Jet. Will land a little bit of damage, maybe open up some spot there. But TSS, again, they just have nothing but time on their hands, really. They can wait for all of this to pop off.
Yeah, and Team Intel now kind of getting their hand forced a little bit. They decide to commit to this. They get the early knocks. I Loved Her finally goes down, and here's the push from the Crypto. It looks like RR did not want to wait around and lose out on this KP, but it might have come back to bite them as TSS is going to swing in, and TSS is just going to wait in the wings, clean this one up, and get a free little victory here on the third party. Great job from Blurs, Boop & Co. That is a great way to start off the first half of the Challengers number 4 finals.
It was a beautiful, beautiful play there from TSS. I mean, they had great high ground that they could hold on to forever. And I think Risen Rose really were in a position where they knew what they had to do. They had to take that fight. They had to clean it up quickly. Unfortunately, it didn't go down maybe as quickly as they would have liked. And credit to TSS. I mean, they came down there instantly. I mean, the timing was just perfect on it. I mean, Risen Rose had barely any time to reset before the push came through.
Yeah, and I mean, that might just be a game of numbers, right? Risen Rose recognizing that they maybe don't have the winning spot. They're running out of cover very quickly, so they commit to finding a little bit more KP right at the end of the game before they inevitably went down to your game 2 winners, TSS. And of course, just a quick reminder, because it is critical, a lot of the squads are scrapping for points because there is still a pro league qualifier on the line. People are trying to climb up the rankings to get into that Pro League qualifier winners bracket, and if not, hopefully also squeeze into that losers bracket, joining the 4 teams that have already, or the 3 teams, excuse me, that have already taken down one of these Challenger Circuit finals. So it is really critical for all of these teams, including Risen Rose, to squeeze out every bit of every single game because time's running out. We've only got 4 more games left, Poro, before this split 1 Challenger Circuit is done and dusted.
Indeed, and you got to think about the big picture. I'm thinking about the picture of just tonight, as so far, you know, a lot of the times we've seen teams come in here and just back-to-back great games on one particular map, but so far it's been kind of a mess here. I mean, well, they're in game 1, maybe fall off a little bit game number 2, and they get replaced by teams like TSS and Risen Rose. Yeah,
and Risen Rose is one of those squads that's showing potential, right? They're showing that their colors are come in more than just, you know, playing safe and waiting for the spots that we like to see for teams in the mid game. And this beautiful push from Azura's. Azura's again, another team that's been really successful at their fight selection. Don't exactly know what was going on there. Maybe a bit of a disconnect, but yeah, Asura's holding down multiple spots, taking really great fights all throughout, and ultimately falling to Risen Rose. These teams are showing that they're willing to take the fights that they need to take to have a successful game.
I will say, if you pin my arm behind me and ask me to pick somebody who's looked the most impressive here so far tonight, I think it would have to be Asuras. Just with the, as we said, the fight selection and how quickly they're kind of going through and stacking their kill points now. Even though they haven't gotten a win yet, or really, I don't even think they've gotten a top 5, if I'm not mistaken. They're still collecting KP. They're still getting those kills, and you can see 9 points there after this game. Although Risen Rose, that's 20 desperately needed points for that squad.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge, and it's huge to get that early because you can carry that momentum into the next map if you maybe aren't as confident. And Stormpoint, we know, can often be the equalizer for a lot of these squads. In fact, every map swap can really be an equalizer for a 6-game series. So all of this really critical amount of points that people are picking up. TSS very happy with that win that's getting them up to that 16-point marker. And we shout out Asurus, but Asurus, we see there actually going out in 8th position means that they only picked up 9 points. So even though they looked pretty decent, pretty clean, that's still only 9 points. They still have a lot of scrapping left to do.
Yep, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And I guess you got to give a shout out to Team Intel as well. 9 kills, 16 points overall. I mean, sure. we did see one fairly decent fight from them on screen, but they were apparently doing work off camera as well for 9 kills and 16 points overall. So not a bad performance for Team Intel. Well, we have one more game left to go here on Stormpoint. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will bring back your other casters, Tenrek and Tom, to finish out this first half.
We are back again with the finals of the 4th Challenger Circuit here in NA Challenger in the ALGS. I'm Tenrek, back again with Tom, heading into game number 3, the final one on World's Edge for tonight. But Tom, I mean, we just came off of a boatload of action over on World's Edge previously, with TSS taking the win, but Risen Rose taking the lion's share of the points.
I mean, that game was mind-blowing, I think, as we just jumped to the leaderboard, and TSS there have just brawled their way right to the top of the leaderboard, passing DAS, who couldn't quite back up their aggressive game. And I think that, we were talking about, in our last game about the sort of the risk of playing on edge and finding that consistency. That has been consistent all the way through the rounds, the 4 rounds leading up to this. But finals is a different beast. And as you can see, in that last game, the amount of teams playing aggressive, the amount of teams really trying to push for big games, it can make that, a bit of a difficult prospect trying to put down big games consistently.
Really interesting thing about this is kind of how the leaderboard has blended into the current leaderboard for total points among teams. Because, I mean, obviously, you have your standouts like TSS, like Deadass, like Risen Rose, like Team Intel that are already in this top 10 and are already pretty comfortable, excuse me, not Asurus, who are already very comfortable in their spots and just attempting to find those points. And then you have teams like Asurus, who are, in a bit of a worse spot, but have made a really solid performance so far with that win in game number 2, all the way up to 4th place. And then on the other side of things, you have Blackhand, who is probably going to walk away from this circuit no matter who wins, still the first place spot in the challenge in the entire circuit. And yet they really have not done well these past 2 games. They have fallen very, very early, and they have taken scraps of KP along the way too. They really have not found their leg up yet.
Yeah, Blackhand, I mean, we were, just chatting during that last game about their playstyle is different. they seem to be playing a little bit more in themselves. And I'm wondering if that is potentially with an eye on that Pro League qualifier, because we know that even if they don't quite win, even if a team like Deadass or Stormtroopers, really has a big gap and maybe manages just to sneak ahead of them by a few points, they're definitely in that top 8. They're definitely in that winners bracket. But once you get past that winners bracket, then you're in a match point format qualification game. And the key to match point is being able to win a game. And we've seen teams, at every level, teams like Furia, at the Raleigh ALGS Championships, struggling to win the game. It's one thing being able to run down, drop loads of points. But if you can't execute that win, then you're not going to be successful in the match point format. It doesn't matter if you come third with 28 kills. You're still not winning. You're still not potentially qualifying for that Pro League. So maybe they're just taking the time today to maybe try and play for those end games. And clearly it's not quite working for them yet. It doesn't quite suit their natural style. So it'd be interesting to see if they shift up or they keep trying it, and especially how they play on Stormpoint in just a couple of games' time when we're looking at a map that plays out very differently to World's Edge.
At the very least, I think Blackhand is allowed to do this. I think that's the one saving grace for them right now. They have the ability to kind of play with more experimentation and be, more directive towards observation rather than actually winning to prepare themselves for the future. But like I said, I mean, Blackhand, while they're able to rack up a lot of points, when it comes to these lobbies in particular, winning is still something that is very difficult. And like you said, winning is crucial at those higher levels that these teams are fighting tooth and nail to get to. And we will do it once again right now. Game number 3 in World's Edge here in the finals. GOW and Team Orglis, Tom. That's where I'm looking first over on Lava Siphon.
Yeah, we're going to see if we're going to go for, 3 out of 3 here for Team GOW, or whether that's going to, is it going to get fought again? I think it's very difficult to, for Orglis to keep fighting that, because GOW have got their eye on they're fighting it again. I mean, who am I to talk to a finalist team about what they're doing? But it's a really difficult decision, because the question is, even if you win this fight now, GOW aren't going to give you the spot. GOW, are not allowing you to have this spot. They feel like they own it. They've got one foot in the door already into the Pro League qualifier. You're damaging your own chances here, really, for putting down some points. You've been out straight away. You keep dying early. You aren't in the game. You feel like you're doing nothing. You're spending 95% of your time just watching, and that hurts you. And fair play. They're going for it. They're fighting. That's a really good ALGS star there to close off that doorway. And if they can get the opening knock here, can they make something happen? But they have 3 white armors.
Yeah, it's just such a problem spot, because Orglis has no points going into this as well, and so winning is essentially a necessity unless they absolutely pop off in the foreground. But with GOW here, like you said, it's kind of a moot point. And also, like you said, best case scenario, if Orglis were able to contest properly against GOW, which, by the way, they weren't able to, again, despite their superior position, and I think that just speaks to how well GOW is going to do in this spot going forward. But if Team Orglis were able to make it to the Pro League qualifier, hell, the Pro League in general, GOW would still be going here. GOW would still be egoing over in Lava Siphon. They would still be contesting, and Team Orglis would have such a hellish time trying to break out, not just today, but tomorrow, the day after that, the day after that, the day after that, the month after that. Forever, GOW will be standing behind them at that point. And so it definitely sucks. Like you said, we talked about this in the green room. It stinks that Orglis decided to not relinquish that spot. But then again, with every other spot claimed by a team that could potentially be just as dangerous, it's a tough nut to crack. But in the meantime, we are down to 19 teams with Orglis the first and only to fall so far. Not too many rotations coming in just yet, which is a little different than we've seen, despite the relatively similar circle to Game 2.
Yeah, I think you just to go back to that, I think you make a really good point there about, so one thing, to sit here and say maybe they should just move, just give up the spot. But the question is, where do you go? Is there something worth, landing on? Is there a spot that is actually, going to benefit you? You don't want to be landing on some sort of no-name little village, rocking around with a P20, 2 cells and a standard stock. So it is that definite, that sort of, like you say, Apex is just all about, taking choices. What is the best percentage play you can do? And clearly for them, they thought it was to fight it. And now the pressure's on them to, you know, deliver a big Stormpoint game. As we're with I Loved It there in Geyser. Looks like it might be pulling Geyser, but who cares about the zone when you could just fight on edge? Intel here, you know, taking it big against Stormtroopers. You know, Vize ducking for cover there, one of the most experienced players in this lobby. You know, lots of experience in the Pro League. With Lazarus, he appeared in the ALGS Year 2 Split 1 online playoffs in North America. And that experience in a lobby like this is so important because you're playing against teams that you might not be that familiar with. And having that experience, having played so many games of top-level Apex, being able to make stuff up on the fly and make something work and change a plan at the split second and have, you know, a backup spot and a backup spot and a backup spot when you're on a Valcourt, that is what can set you apart. And that's one of the reasons why Stormtroopers are sitting pretty in the top 8 right now in the overall leaderboard.
Rotations finally beginning here, although closer to the southern end. Epicenter and Fragment are essentially completely unoccupied right now. It looks like they're settling on the Geyser circle for the most part, a lot of these teams. That may be the play here, but in the meantime, a couple other teams still trying to round out the pack. Positive Entropy has been looking for a spot here on the southern end. They're trying to play guard dog, and they might be able to do so. Blackhand in slightly better spot. TSS will fall early. Oh, that's such a big reversal of the previous World's Edge games. Currently atop the leaderboard, that will change after this with such an early departure and no KP to boot. But Blackhand is stuck between a rock and a hard place as well, and that Arc Star is going to slow down Yaz. The rest of the fire can come through. Just like that, it's a 2v3. Kodagami now has to regress, and they will fall as well. Intel making every breakthrough they need to. A lot of damage still taken, so they want to take their time, but not too much. This rhythm cannot be totally interrupted, especially considering how much noise they're going to start making and how many teams are sitting around them at the very same time. The double exhibit on the verge as well, potentially here. And Intel just looking for that final way to bust down that door and get those extra KP under their belt. Until then, this is their building and they are not pushing it.
Yeah, I'm just taking a look at the zone map here and where, you know, we can see where the third zone is pulling, and this is going to be a really, really close zone call for a lot of these teams. This zone, you know, if I was calling it as a player, it looks like a 50-50 whether this pulls into the no-name, whether this pulls into the Geyser. I think it's going to pull down into the Geyser, and, you know, teams like the Crypt are going to be absolutely, you know, rubbing their hands here. They land Geyser, they have Loba, Geyser zone. Geyser zones are a fantastic, you know, zone for Loba teams because there's so many buildings, there's so many spots, you can get so many teams into Geyser. They've got the back building, they've got a lot of control over the space right now. They've got that black market down. They're just sat there, you know, watching all these other teams fight, watching people struggle to find a spot in zone. They pick the building they want, and we can see that is a Valkyr and a half. Outstanding scout shots there by the well-named Go PS. Positive Entropy. They're feeling pretty negative right now.
Oh, man. Goat saying, what did I just walk in on? Able to laser down the last remaining member of PE. And just like that, we are down to 16. Blackhand Blackhand actually fully falling. The rat is gone as well. And so once again, unfortunately, the top dog will not have any bite to go with that bark. Meanwhile, you know, we were focusing on Deadass for a second, who obviously is a team that tends to trail when it comes to Circle, but it doesn't really matter because they kind of just win every fight they get. But that stopped for a second in the previous game. I think they got like 12th or 11th or something in that mix. They didn't really perform too heavily, and so they're currently second on the overall leaderboard. They definitely want to get that spot back. You can tell Deadass is a team that is craving that victory, craving that deadlocked spot on top of that epic ranking that they're trying to achieve. And I think that they absolutely have the capacity to do it. The question is, will they be as explosive on Stormpoint as they have been so far on World's Edge? Hell, will they even be able to carry out their game here on World's Edge? GOW, unfortunately, in a tough spot already, as it is Deadass, who is taking down GOW for the second time this series now. It's all down to Retzi trying to play for distance, but simply no natural cover that can hold them for long. On top of the bodies already dropped, in comes Deadass, down goes GOW, and we're down to 15 squads.
And Deadass maybe actually, you know, getting under a bit of pressure here. We spoke about, well, sometimes if you don't have that Valkyrie and you fight two teams at once, there's no escape. And Revival Games are absolutely teaching that lesson to the ass right now. They've got them pinned in a corner. Horizon ult down. Maybe an escape here out the Horizon queue?
Oh!
No, absolutely not. Get yourself back down into the lobby. Think about what you've done. And again, Revival Games now under pressure again. It's just, we play Call of Duty Zombies right now. It's just wave after wave after wave. And I'm just thinking of teams like the Crypt. We saw them posted up on their Geyser building. They got their wall down, they got their low brawl down, probably having a drink, maybe even tabbed out playing Kovacs or something. Meanwhile, we've got these teams just absolutely brawling, fighting for this bridge. It's supposed to be the most important bridge in the whole of World's Edge.
And that's the crazy thing, is Infiltration is pushing Revival arguably into a better spot where they can sandwich through Big Mod and head into Circle with virtually no contesting outside of maybe the first building that they would have to walk into, which Stormtroopers is currently guarding. And so they're going to recognize that this third party, while potentially lucrative for KP, could put them behind position-wise. So they'll take a step back, at least for now, take some pot shots, and maybe try and regress at a time where the Circle will provide a little more pressure. But until then, Revival are the kings of this bridge, and Big Mod as they make their rotation on through. Indeed, the Circle is dipping towards Geyser. Tom, you were completely correct. And so those black markets, particularly from the Crypt, who, by the way, in an absolutely insane spot so early on here, able to sit pretty, stock up, kit down, and hunker down as well. Rest of these teams still trying to flustered make themselves known. Rose, the leaders of the previous lobby, not in the Battle Royale itself, but in points. Trying to find their way through. They are another team that is tended to trail. Met RG at 1 point. This time it is not them. In fact, it's not any team that's playing super committal just yet, although that may change in a moment here. I think I Loved Her may be scoping this potential fight out, but in the meantime, Fragment's finally been taken up by a couple teams as well.
Yeah, I think that fighting around these buildings, makes the fights so interesting, as we see, some really, really big shots here, and they're going to aggress. They're going for it. They've worked out that there's probably not a lot of teams around them. That Maggie ball straight to the face. Let me know how it tastes. Tweet me after the game.
Apex is a horror game.
Yeah, I mean, who wants balls in the face in the middle of an ALGS final? Absolutely not. Absolutely not for you. However, Asura is really in control of this fight. Deploying that Bloodhound, you cannot overstate the information that it gives you. One button to scan a whole building, and Urel beam, he's beaming, and that is No Name out. Yeah, back to the lobby. They're going to watch the VOD and cringe just as hard as you did at the Jet.
I'm getting a lot of like BRD and Los Demonios vibes from Isuris. They are just so kill hungry, and they don't really care where they have to go to get it. They're just going to keep on searching until they find what they want, which is just KP. And now they still have the members to do it. They were able to manage those angles so effectively. Uriel didn't even need that last BH tack by the end of that fight because they were so aware. They were so superior in position. Speaking of superior in positions, the high ground is taken for now by Risen Rose as the roam will come through. But once again, they will have to make quite the journey to this circle, and it is not an easy one, and they don't have a Valkylt to do it. Meanwhile, speaking of ultimates here, a lot about to come out from the repertoires of several teams in the very same building, including RG, as Sawz is going to let this BH ult fly as the exhibit comes through on the building that they just escaped and are going to try and play with range for, but now with that exhibit up, it's tougher to come in. On top of a gold knockdown shield, Infiltration going to try and play with it, and they do some damage, but they will fall next in 11th. Revival going to try and lay claim to this building, but it's not done just yet. There's still some enemies on the other side of this, and despite the time needed to recover, it looks like RG, they're going to take the gamble, and they are going to aggress. Here comes the damage on both fronts, actually. Shinny's actually going to have to take a step back. Risen Rose, unfortunately, could not make their way through there, and looks like Kalando able to find huge brain apes as well, as they are also roaming from the northern end of this circle towards Vault, but they are about to run into another squad as well, protected by these fences before this recovery period comes through as well. The congestion in these in-betweens, Tom, is getting so tight in a circle that just leaves no room for growth at all.
I think this is just, this is why a lot of teams really dislike Geyser zones. As soon as you see that zone pull into Geyser, you have to book it. If you don't get one of the the top 2 spots or top 3 spots in the zone, you are going to have a real difficult challenge, getting in as the zone pulls away, especially when they pull right back to this main building. I'm looking at the map, and there is literally one team that is fully sat in the next zone after the one that we're about to see is closed now, because there's just nowhere to play. A lot of spots there, you cannot play them early. You have no buildings. It's only the crypt that are sat in the building right now. We can see, O-Senpai and the Stormtroopers holed up, are basically hiding behind some roots and a couple of boxes. And then everybody else is now just having to fight for open space, unless you're, of course, Meatball friend trapped right outside the tunnel. There's a couple of teams, in that tunnel, but you're being gatekept, and you have to fight your way through. You have to make that fight, and it's a really, pretty difficult push making your way through those tunnels.
I think the big question is how much info has been given over to Kalando in that particular area on that vault, because I think that Meatball may be able to make it as long as he just waits until the very final moment. But in the meantime, I'm more concerned with RG and Stormtroopers. They are in such a precarious position, and I don't think both of them are going to come out of this. Asura deciding to take a brawl and already having to use some natural cover of the compadres. God is going to be able to try and take some space here as I Loved Her tries to recover themselves. A little bit of damage done. Which ways? I Loved Her still in this skirmish a little bit. Bofer and Robo attempting to make sure that there's a little collateral, and also this fight's over quick, but with those extra shields available, it's going to take an extra second, and now comes that clash between Stormtroopers and RG, but there's a couple interruptions from the outside world, I think, as Asuras will actually fall before either of them do. Now comes the BH tack as Prophet is the first to jump in on that front line. Everybody from RG now gonna get in on the action and finalize things. Stormtroopers falls, one team remains outside that southern edge of the circle.
The key thing is they've managed to all stay up. They're managing now just to reset. As we're seeing Kalando fighting in that tunnel, the fight had to happen eventually, and they're already a man down. This is a very, very difficult push for them, but they're taking their time, have a knockdown to play. They just need something big here. There's nothing else to say. And I'm wondering, is Meatball lurking behind them?
He still is.
He's actually still chilling.
He's in the same exact spot, too. He hasn't even started to go through that tunnel. He's giving so much time over.
Find this man a keyboard or controller? Is he got an input? Is he all right? Are we chilling out there?
Kalando is gate-kept by Buff Pathfinder, but Buff Pathfinder is a little bit gate-kept by Crypt right now, who are still the only ones in that second circle after this penultimate one. And now comes Meatball, but the fight is still raging on. Kalando is about to be walked in on. Could this be a squad finisher if Sponge doesn't see this? The baby also hiding in this corner here, and Meatball's actually just gonna head right through completely undetected and make it into that circle aside from Crypt. While we're still in this struggle, and in fact, it's gonna be a third party as well! I Loved Her jumps in and finishes off Kalando instead, and now it's Buff Pathfinder versus the former.
There's only the baby left on that Watson. This is looking like an easy cleanup. And I'm looking at the Crypt right now because, they had the best spot in zone, but do they have many kills or any kills to their name? Are they just sat here on, 5-6 points? Have they been able to rack up enough points? Was he a Meatball chilling behind that tree? Fair play, respect, well-timed rotation. I take it back. Definitely have a keyboard or controller. But are the Crypt, for all their loot, for all their strong positioning, are they actually going to be able to, place ahead of teams like Revival Games, who are, been able to rack up lots of kills, teams like Stormtroopers who were able to rack up lots of kills? Are they going to be posting a big game, or are they just taking the placement here?
Well, you got to bridge that gap between surviving and killing. Surviving is always more important, but killing is what nets you those extra points that RG has already graciously gotten, and it looks like they're on the hunt for even more. This time, the Crypt, the potential victims, as long as RG plays their cards right. Saw's early ult here, but it makes sense in order to make sure that these corners are well cleared, and with the help of the smoke bomb, it's even easier. The digital sight helping out Sauce to get those early bits of damage in, and already a lot of pressure put onto this team. Crypt currently at only 1 KP. Fourth placement points is good, but there is still a rat in this equation. There is still 3 teams outside of that rat in this equation. There is still so much more game left to play, and it looks like RG is going to go for a slightly easier target. So much damage done from Shinny onto the exiting buff Pathfinder, and I Loved Her also trying to make their way out. The rat finally falls in running late as I Loved Her tries to take their place, but it's getting too heavily aggressed by now. Two different teams as the Crypt also sets their sights while RG takes those pot shots, and it's a question of who will rotate out and who will rotate in, because the Crypt is still in the middle of this, still arguably in the best position. And RG, while they're on the edge of the circle, they may have to move in a little bit more than I Loved Her does right now. And considering that I Loved Her has one more KP than Revival, there is still so much in the balance for this game, so much in the balance for this leaderboard here in these last couple seconds.
Revival, I think they've done so well to work their way in, and they've given themselves options here in this endgame because they can either fight the team inside, they can clear out this room, Newcastle, but they don't have a Watson, so no Watson gen to prevent nades. No Watson gen to give them shields, but they've had that Loba, so I'm sure their backpacks are full of loot. If not, then literally what's the point of having Loba? But if you don't want to push that room, you don't want to push in, you don't want to be aggressive, you can jump on the roof, you can focus the team in the field.
But who's paying attention to I Loved Her? I think that's the biggest question here, because they're in that open space, and somebody has to keep watch on them, otherwise this is going to be a third party before the fight even really starts. As the Crypt able to stall away this time, and never mind, I Loved Her is just setting up shop. They're making their own building.
It
as
really
the Crypt
feels like Revival Games is deciding who's getting second here.
Yeah,
Are they
I think
fight
so.
inside, or are they going to jump on that roof and put pressure on the outside? It looks like they're kind of doing both. At the moment,
I think they're just waiting.
But this is what happens as an edge team. If you clear your side, you give yourself so much room, and you give they've earned the right to make these choices. They've earned the right to have options and to see what works. And this is the benefit. They've got a lot of kills. They've done a lot of damage. They're on red, gold, fantastic shield combination. They've got fantastic weapons. Your gold prowler on a controller. That is the sort of thing that keeps you up at night.
And I think this is also a great choice for Revival to also just take their time. Because, honestly, I think the best thing that they can do now that they're offered that freedom is not use it yet. And wait for another team to potentially make a mistake while still exhuming that pressure from something like the BH tax, from something like just a couple bullets thrown out from Sheeny, like we're seeing now, even though the damage is getting traded, and that Valk tack is going to force RG to head back down to that lower ground. Here comes that circle. Some movement has to start. The Crypt is going to have to be the last team to do it. However, it will be out of one singular door, and so it's quite the risk that may come into quite the reward, aka second or even first place if this fight is managed well enough. But Revival and I Loved Her still taking these shots, still beating around this bush. So many meds still available. Crypt waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and I don't think even they know when that may be. Shinny's ultimate is back up as well, and so Chaos could be wrong the second that this building is exited, but his circle is still encroaching, still a lot of natural cover to work with, and because of that, RG, they still have to play so unbearably slow. They still don't have an aggressive tactic, but with that bang ult, it may be the move, especially since the black hole has been tossed onto RG as well, and there's the pressure coming in from the Crypt, front door opening up, EMP as well, and RG is just gonna get absolutely wiped out, save for one at this moment. Can they survive? No, I don't think they can.
He has the Newcastle wall as well, and here it goes. Newcastle wall down, and we're a straight 3v3 here, and this could be a Crypt win, It's looking like just Robo left.
It is.
Oh, no! They are going to be kicking themselves. What a fantastic turnaround for I Loved Her. It looked like they had the worst spot by a mile. And Revival Games, maybe just, we talked about how great it is to have the options, to have the choice. But if you can't make that choice, if there's no clear path for you, and you're stuck between two options, they kind of just got stuck in the middle. They didn't really commit to a plan, and they got punished, and they only take third place.
And then they still had to act first. I think that's the other craziest thing, is that, Revival was in a great position. They had all the time in the world, and I think they were able to react however they wanted to, but the other teams just played so slowly that they couldn't react. They had to act, and so, the Rolling Thunder had to come through, and so directly after that, boom, Black Hole thrown in, boom, EMP thrown in, boom, Crypt has an entire wipe. Unfortunately, they're not able to keep those residuals up long enough for I Loved Her, who turned to a proverbial rat of a team of sorts in that final three for the moment, did them well, netting them that first place spot and a couple extra KP. We'll see how it influences the leaderboard in just a moment, but a lot of huge changes. TSS fell early, Deadass fell a little bit early. There's going to be a lot of top dogs that will not have as big of a gap going into Storm Point. That's very crucial.
I think, speaking of dogs, I think Crypt are going to be woofing down that zone. They're still going to be happy with the second place. It's, we spoke at the beginning about their competition and, how they depend on calling the best spot in zone. Tick there for them. They absolutely nailed the zone call. And you, as a zone team, when you get a zone right on you, the pressure is on. You cannot post, a top 3 minimum in the zones on your POI, and you are going to struggle, because there's RNG, right? You might get a really far pull on Storm Point. You might get, they land Geyser. The next pull might be Trials. So you have to take those opportunities when you're given. And I think even though they are going to be kicking themselves, and knowing that team and how passionate they are about success, they're going to be feeling on. They're going to be happy with what they've done, but they're definitely frustrated they couldn't pull out the win on their home turf. I think when they, when the dust settles a little bit and they look back on the points they pulled that game, I think they have to be satisfied with that second place.
Yeah, I think Crypt is definitely considering how set they kind of had to be at that point, because they had called the circle and then they were pressured by team after team after team, and then in the end RG was behind them. The circle was coming. I will say, I think that it was not a great idea to let that black hole fly right out the gate, because I think it was very clear that RG was, I think, taking on I Loved Her because of that Rolling Thunder thrown out before the building got exited. And so Crypt arguably may have had a couple more resources that they could have thrown at the wall once I Loved Her dealt with the wrong competition, but it was just a question of who was going to third party who. I Loved Her got a slight drop on that, and for that, they will get the first place dub by the skin of their teeth. Really big congratulations to them. That's such a booster seat for a team that really, really needs it, because I Loved Her is currently 68th in the challengers going into this, starting with 700 and come out of it with at least 1,600, but that still isn't enough for the cutout. They really have to show out today, and may even be forced to win if they want a chance at this Pro League qualifier.
And they are one of those teams that we talked about as we take a look at the map. That 24 points, what an absolutely fantastic score total. Like the Crypt and teams, like Kalando that got into the zone pretty quickly. It can be hard to compete with those teams that are able to run it up, and put big points in. The Crypt, the best possible, exact same points as Revival Games, who had the opportunity to brawl their way in, and it really shows the contrast between playing Edge and playing zone, and how if you can't pick off those kills, if you can't snag 3, 4, 5 kills, like just cheeky kills, just nicking something across the map, not actually getting yourself involved in a fight, then you're not going to be able to post big score totals. But I Loved Her in that bubble, right? They're one of those teams that, unless some sort of mathematical miracle happens, they have to win. They have to get that automatic qualification by winning, and they've now put themselves in a great position to do so. In place, they are gonna, they're gonna be thinking, now we've got an opportunity. But the question is, can they keep it up? Are they going to start to get nervous? It's in their grasp. They might have come into this thinking, it's unlikely. We've got to win. We've not quite got the points. It's only a win. Winning is really difficult in a battle royale, no matter how good you are, to get that win. And now the pressure's on. So as we head into Storm Point, can I Loved Her keep it up? Can they keep that momentum going? Will they be improved by the pressure that's on them now? Will they find their absolute best game?
Some other things to really shout out on this leaderboard. Deadass, of course, despite getting 15th in the lobby, able to grab those 6 extra KP, so ending up getting, I think, the 6th most points in the entire lobby for that past game, despite such an early finish, able to boost them up and give them back the number 1 spot so far in this lobby. TSS falling to 3rd after an early leave. Risen Rose down to 5th after a really solid game 2. But the 2 names that really stand out to me are the 2 teams that have been contesting this whole time. GOW, who, despite winning a challenger circuit, wants to grab as many points as possible to try and grab a winner's bracket spot, because right now they are really low in the count at 40th place going into today. And also Team Orglis, obviously, at 0 points right now, unable to grab anything just yet. I don't believe they'll be contested when we go to Storm Point, but Tom, you and I won't be there to find out, at least at first. Mello and... oh my god. Poro. I knew it. I just wanted to make sure I did. Mello and Poro. I'm so sorry, Poro. Your name is long. We'll be back with game number 4 heading to Storm Point after this short break.
Well, hello again. I am, I guess, Porosaurus. Yeah, Pora. There we go. That's mine. And for now. And I'm John with Mellocrit. We are here to bring you the map switch, everybody's favorite part of the day. When all the bad things that happened the first 3 games are completely washed away and forgotten, and we wipe the slate clean, we go over to a whole new map, and everything's going to be good from here on out, right?
Surely, absolutely. No, but in all seriousness, there's actually one really big, interesting point where I've been thinking about, because I think ultimately this map switch could actually be bad for like a lot of teams, and that's in particular because GOW and Deadass, right, 2 of the teams that we know are most willing and most capable of taking fights, especially in the middle of the game. They were dropping right next to each other, and GOW was dropping contested on World's Edge. If I'm not mistaken, we don't actually have that situation coming out. Depending on how people decide to drop, we might not have that same situation. So those rotates won't be crashing as much anymore. You won't have this it seems like it's written in a book how GOW dies to Deadass, and then Deadass dies or almost dies to RG. I don't think we'll be seeing that as much. So this map switch means we might have 2 lobby demon teams just running all over.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of teams that are not afraid to go upside your head, and if they have nobody there to kind of put them on the back foot right off the bat, well, it, as you said, could get a little bit dicey here for some of these other squads. Well, we are getting into game number 3 now, after we saw a big win there from I Loved Her. You know, it was one of those, man, it's the thing that you hate if you're the crypt, right? You get circle screwed essentially by catching the circle. I mean, they had 1 kill throughout the entirety of that game up until the very end, and there's not really anything they could have done differently about it. I mean, you don't really push away, right?
And unfortunately, a team that's not going to push away is GOW, who is once again contested by the exact same team. I was wrong on every single point that I made right before this game, because GOW once again contested by the exact same squad, and guess who is dropping just to their west? It's none other than Deadass. So right now the score is 3-0 for GOW. Will they turn it around here on a new POI? It looks like Team Orglis has already lost 1 though, but I believe it might have been a trade, so maybe not looking too worse for wear here to start things off. Yeah, you see there Orglis taking some shots on the knocked player, the confirm onto A1s, and GOW has actually just decided to turn tail and run on out of your Poro. So do we call it a win? Is that a dub for Orglis?
I mean, it's their first point in 4 games. So yeah, why not? Let's call it a dub, as we see another fight here. Infiltration this time going to be the one to scrap, right? They've got at least in this spot, you got nothing on your back. Water, right? At least protect that, but no, it's not even going to matter. We the people just getting pushed in the face. If you just gets a little bit of chance here to shield back up again, what do you do now? No name kind of taking it to him.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it is all water down here. Not a whole lot of cover to work with as you get pushed on out. The engage here from Chickas is going to be huge. Usually that's usually going to get punished, but when you've already done enough damage, even if your horizon goes down with that gravity lift, you are still going to win it out. So no name actually winning out on the contest. So we have the no-name team and the Orglis team winning out this time around on our first set of contests for Storm Point. What a way to kick it off for the second half.
I'm telling you, man, map swap. It doesn't seem to matter. Even if you're just hot dropping, it seems to give you that extra little kick in the pants you need to get things moving in the right direction. So no name back up to full strength, and at least they managed to take care of all of their team. W still in this, you know, albeit with 1 player, but we'll see what they can do with that.
And we're actually getting a pretty neutral zone from the looks of it as well. And again, I can't even like illustrate to you the levels of wrong that I was. Here we see Deadass now. They've switched around the order a little bit, but we have Deadass fighting RG. I have written here, Deadass dies to RG or Deadass kills RG. So We're about to find out after that.
This is the high tier in-depth analysis I come to you for.
Yeah, it's very high level, very very deep. No, but in all seriousness,
a lot of time on those notes,
dude. Actually, this is actually huge for so many squads though, because I think they're going to have the same boon that we saw on World's Edge, where those rotates were crashing, they were fighting, they were losing resources to contest. So now, a really similar situation. Those three squads have to deal with each other, and realistically, only one is going to come out, maybe two of them. So here's going to be the first 3v3 for that 3-stack of squads that we've been looking at right now. The high ground is all on the side of Deadass, but look at the height being stolen away by RG. This is just a bit of a fiesta.
What is happening?
I have no words.
Well, there you go.
Deadass wins this one.
Deadass comes out ahead somehow in a very strange fight, for sure. And we didn't really get a chance to mention them because we just kind of glanced at them briefly. But Blackhand won a fight. And look at that. They're still alive. They're still 3 strong. A team that I think all of us were kind of looking at, and, based off of previous results, don't think it was too far-fetched to say that Blackhand may be a favorite coming into this weekend, and hadn't really done much of anything through the first 3 games. Maybe this will be where they turn things around.
And that would be really kind of a turn on their narrative, because, again, reminder, they've been to every single Challenger Circuit final so far. They are a household name of the Challenger Circuit at this point, if you could call it that. And it's interesting because we've seen historically that they tend to scrap most of their points together during the World's Edge map. So to have such a shabby start in games 1 through 3 means it's going to be even more difficult. Hopefully they've done the work. Hopefully they've done they've studied up, they've kind of read the situation a little bit better so that they can have some success on Stormpoint. And again, when you have those demon squads fighting each other instead of potentially playing spoiler on your rotates, though they're not necessarily going to find them on your rotates. That's a big opportunity for them, and they have to utilize it to the max.
Well, running late, we see Meatball Friend, the hero solo from last game. Managed to net at least a top 5 spot here for the squad, although no KP to go along with it, but that's at least some points. But Pathfinder actually getting taken out as well here. Seeing the kill feed running late, just setting up the blockade, setting up the tower to defend.
Beautiful stuff here. I mean, you love to see
look at that. Look at the symmetry. Look at the symmetry of those.
The angles.
It's so perfect. Just well placed.
And realistically, that's something that's really critical. And I've already been a little bit critical of the way that some teams are able to spot select for Watson. You need to know how to set up to defend from these pushes. Again, GOW, Absolute Menace, Unafraid, or so many squads. I mean, you can put a lot of people in there. Asurus, if they catch you in an interesting spot where it seems isolated, they might take the fight as well. So if you don't know how to hold the spots that you're picking, especially with ring information, you're really giving up a lot of the value from that Watson, especially paired with the crypto, that's supposed to give you all of that information, right? And even slow down some pushes when you happen to have the crypto drone alive and have your ultimate up again. Real situational, very good character. I mean, you really do have to try and squeeze out as much value as you can from these early game spots.
Well, looks like we might be getting to see another fight here from Goat Karma Orioles.
That just continues to be completely unfazed by these pushes.
No, yeah, this actually looked like Orgulus may have snuck up on the back side here of Deadass. And, well, as has been the case with many squads that have run into Deadass, they immediately pay the price. The way that this team just flips on any team that wants to try to take a fight with them, it's I mean, between them and Asurus, it just seems like they are just prepared. The comms have got to be really, really good for these squads to be able to turn the fight around so quickly and easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, credit to them. You can say what you want about bad push-ins, but man, they have rarely messed one of those up for how bad or how good it might look. So until someone decides to stop them, Deadass is just going to continue doing exactly that. Redeem right now actually doing a great job just working this team in the building. And they might be getting a little bit excited here, but Redeem holding a pretty decent spot here. They get to control a good amount of space, but they have to play small here, which can be both a blessing and a curse, especially when, you know, teams are more than happy to take 3v3s anywhere on the map. But the setup here, pretty decent. Joey Blackout on that Watson, setting up defenses, setting up that generator. So they'll be holding strong and continue to exert pressure on all of these squads.
Yeah, as you said, I mean, it's if you are going to run that Watson, knowing your areas that you want to play out of, that you feel comfortable playing out of, and getting set up in is vital. And Redeem, not committing to staying, 100% inside the tower defense right there, but playing around it and being aggressive at the same time while also not straying too far away from home base. Seem to be working out pretty good for him here. As we check back in with Deadass, looks like they managed to take care of running late.
Yeah, they're doing exactly that, and I really like the way that Asurus plays a lot of these, because I mean they have a game plan. It's not just random pushes. We see them consistently doing kind of a lot of the same thing, where they want to hold this sort of pinch between the zone, the current zone and the next zone. They want to clear that out, and then they kind of take ownership of that side. So whether they execute those team fights or not, that's really what it comes down to for the success of this game plan. And so far, especially with a composition like this that's sort of I guess kind of made for fighting, I'm surprised to see that they've slotted in the Bloodhound here as opposed to the Seer, but they seem to be making it work just fine, and they might have just found another squad to potentially bully away from their side of the map.
Yeah, it seems area control is kind of the order of the day here for Asurus. I mean, they know that there's a team back there. You don't see them overstretching or over-aggressing. Regardless of how much damage they do, they know that they have the power position here. They like their spot. They'll just keep an eye on everything that's going on around them, and if they happen to get something off of it, great. If they don't, at the end of the day, we still have a great spot that we like to play around here. So good on Asurus for the time being, and it looks like they've already got Thalos making the way up, looking around off to the north here. So already the next move being planned here for Asurus.
And they're playing pretty wisely around the teams that they probably expect to be there. Again, you don't want to get up LOS to that little nut building that's pretty dang close nearby as well. But the team that might be actually closest to them on this side is Blackhand, who's starting to find a bit of a push here and here. We're hopefully going to see a little bit of that 3v3 prowess that has gotten them so far in these tournaments. And that is just a quick wipe onto, I think, potentially a Rat, maybe a duo of TSS. So 4 KP at least already for them. And yes, indeed, Asurus now maybe looking to pick up the pieces of that fight.
Here we go. Blackhand starting to show signs of life here in the second half of the day. Cutting back over once again. Deadass pushing into another fight. Looks like this time it's going to be Crypt, as not sure who's holding where. It looks like Crypt is working around the outside. I thought Deadass was working around the outside too. Maybe they're both working around the outside. Nobody really in the center here. So Crypt being a little bit more aggro.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the aggression sometimes can be punished a little bit if teams know their setups. Again, just such a critical aspect of knowing your macro, knowing the map, knowing the zones is you should be able to bully teams that are playing just wily stuff that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, no rhyme or reason. But oftentimes, again, teams like Deadass make me eat my words sometimes, because they're probably going to set up a push here. It's a 2v2 situation. I don't know if they know that. Goat FPS actually going in for the banner recovery, and they get it. But will they survive? That's a whole different question.
That is a very good question, as Goat got knocked extremely low there. Maybe 1-2 hits away at most. But looks like they will get it, and they'll get it away, and they might be able to get Karma back up. We'll see if Deadass can reset completely, although it is getting pretty late in the day here on game number 4. We'll see what they decide to do.
Yep. It was starting to get increasingly more difficult, and the tower defense is actually being played by GOW currently, as well as Team Intel. So the teams that have opted to get in here pretty early, Stormtroopers, another team, and they actually really like that building for the zone. We actually saw it, I'm pretty sure, in a previous Challenger circuit. They actually like to get that pretty dang early. They hold that spot, and they tend to squeeze a lot of kills out of that spot as well, especially with teams trying to continuously rotate over towards that top tower. They can just soak up random picks here and there. No crazy pushes though for the time being, as more teams seem to have opted for a bit of a slower walk up. I'm curious to know if they're going to be punished for it. Risen Rose does have some space to work with, but we know that this side of the map in particular is pretty dang populated.
Yeah, Risen Rose pulling off of that 3v2, maybe not getting all the information, or just deciding that they want to try to take their next spot here inside circle rather than stick around for that fight, checking out what's going on inside, and they'll see the Crypt boys, Crypt gang, boys and girls, guys, gals, non-binary pals, all hanging out in there. But Blackhand, once again, late game Blackhand. We have not gotten to see it so far today, but throughout throughout all these Challenger circuits, Blackhand they're a team that can handle themselves late game. Like, it feels like the comms are there, the shot calling is there. And now we'll finally get a chance to see it, as they are protecting the edge, and so far it's working out a treat.
Beautiful stuff there. A little bit of help from the Prowler, but they are going to take down No Name. So again, another team that's looking to clear their rotation a little bit. They are getting looked at. We can see they're on the map by potentially another squad, but this is good loot for them. This is a good opportunity for them to recover and make their next move, but it's not going to be easy, as this ring has pulled quite a ways away from them, as we have already seen, pulling pretty dang hard over towards that god height, that ultimate height, where teams like GOW and Team Intel are already setting up a defense, and now they're forced to defend once again. A push coming onto their side of the map from across an open field, no less, and they are down so low.
And it was Asurus. Asurus wanted it. Asurus took the fight to Blackhand, and Blackhand takes them down without suffering a single knock. That has not been easy to do so far here today. Asurus finally meeting their match here in game number 4.
Yeah, and I can't say I understand why that push was at all necessary. I mean, taking a look at where they were holding on the map near that spider nest, they had the opportunity to potentially walk up, play the wall underneath where we saw Stormtroopers already set up. I mean, there were some options there. I didn't necessarily know if pushing all the way opposite side of ring was the right one, and they're punished for it.
Well, it's the game that Asurus has been playing all day, hasn't it? I mean, they have been very aggressive, taking fights, pushing out, third-partying when they think they have the advantage. This time, unfortunately, it doesn't go their way, but it has worked out nicely for them so far here today. Risen Rose, meanwhile, outside. They know exactly what's going on in here. The problem is they just can't seem to finish anybody off. The shots come through, more grenades coming through as well. As this is just, they are just beating down this team. Okay, Crypt finally going to go down.
Yeah, there was some Newcastle-shaped fish in that barrel for them to heat up, and that is 3 KP for them. That is triple red shields for them. I mean, their scenario is looking better and better, and they've already gained, I think, enough presence on this side to be able to continue to shove teams off. But they still have a bit of a walk to make, and they are rotating behind at least a couple teams, including on the edge. You see there, we have Redeem that's walking in. You have, I mean, pretty much every other squad that we've been worrying about throughout the game. Blackhand also starting to walk their way in after a successful defense against the Sewers. This is starting to get crowded.
Deadass back in there as well, as Risen Rose going to take the fight there. We'll find one, we'll find two, we'll find them all. As Deadass goes down, Risen Rose again not taking a knock here, but it looks like some shots being sent over in this direction, but they should be able to reset fairly safely.
Yeah, and I mean, that's great value for them. They recognize that they can, aggress on this team, pick up those kills, and also reclaim their spot that is significantly safer, albeit if there was, a couple more nades in the scenario, in the situation, in the conversation, they might be worse off. But look at the way that they're holding all of this space. I mean, the God height can't really do all that much. I mean, they can definitely poke down below them, but Black Hand also just kind of holding the edge of the beach, and they're going to have to do a lot here to try and walk in, because now we know that there are plenty of squads looking their way, and there is very little space left to work with.
Yeah, they've got their work cut out for them here. Looks like they've got a pretty good idea. Somebody hanging out on the other side of the bridge might try to go for the offensive Bangalore smoke, but now a fight being taken to them as they're going to lose Katagimi. Now Yaz and Voltic going to have to be the only two to push in, and they push right into a Watson fence. And Voltic, you can see, still alive, but Stormtroopers holding the line for the time being.
Yeah, and Stormtroopers have been there for pretty much the entire game, and they've managed to rack up a little bit of their shields, actually really just finding that gold, so they haven't done much in the way of evoing up, and it looked like Redeem was actually going to take advantage of that push up from Black Hand, but ultimately they fall as well. Calando there on the edge, and Risen Rose here to claim the victims.
Oh, I love this from Risen Rose, the aggression to push out and try to get these KP while they have them. And they will get at least one. And now, oh no, Stormtroopers. What a great read here as they push out and try to take advantage of them. As Stormtroopers, they've been, as you said, just kind of hanging out in that building for so long, and they just come out at the perfect time, and Risen Rose completely caught off guard.
And look at the jump in loot quality, Poro. I mean, from 1 second to the next, we saw them from 2 blues and a gold to a gold, a red, and I think potentially another red or a purple. So big stocks going up for this squad, and now they're sitting even more comfortable in the zone. They don't necessarily have the most long-term reliable spot here. That Godhide does feel pretty good, but there's only a duo that is currently holding it down. Props to them for having made it this far as a duo, and really there's only 4 squads, so they are still on track to potentially steal this game away and pick up what would have otherwise been a goose egg and turn it into a 9-point game, perhaps even stealing out a win. There's a lot of opportunity here for GOW.
Sure is. GOW, late game. GOW, something we haven't gotten to see so far today, but we know that it is a terrifying prospect here. But it looks like for their part, they're just kind of content holding on to this high ground, kind of figuring out where everybody else is and waiting for the next circle to come through, see if they can maybe take advantage. They know the situation that they're in. They're with only players up. They've got to be careful, and they've got to choose their fight wisely. And I think they know that they've got a full squad underneath them in intel. And really, it's just a waiting game at this point.
Yep, and we still have Tailsos and Spongito also holding it down. So Intel starting to make their move. They have a crumb of space to work with. It's actually relatively safe, though, as long as they don't get looked at by more than one squad. And they have that Seer as well, which is going to continue to feed them intel. 83% on the ultimate, so it may be up just in time for this final fight, but it's looking like it might be a little too late here on the draw. A minute and 20 before the final ring closes, Poro, and they're just starting to set up as much as they can to defend from the inevitable drop and the inevitable swing from the squads around them.
I mean, GOW is having so much influence on what's happening in this circle, and they haven't even really peaked it. I mean, I think everybody knows that they're up here, and they're just kind of waiting for them to make the play. And unfortunately, it looks like they might be in a little bit of trouble now. As all eyes on GOW as Retzi and Detox slowly push down. No damage coming through just yet, but as you saw, Intel is just in a beautiful position to kind of hold things off. But now the push is coming through. Kalando actually doing some damage, and GOW taking advantage of that push will come down. Retzi will go down. Detox now the last one up. Intel slowly dying out as Stormtroopers are going to be the one to benefit off of it all. The last team alive, all 3 up, and they come in at the perfect time to get the win.
Yeah, and ultimately they get to hold so much space to the point where GOW was forced to drop down. Team Intel swinging out and actually having to deal with both duos, which was just not the optimal scenario for them. So that allows for Stormtroopers to swing on in, finish off those kills, and they pick up the dub. Poro, they were so deep in that zone that entire freaking game, so the fact that they earned that win, they took the one fight, that one third party at the right time to loot up, to scale up their loot to be able to play that end game. I mean, that was just clinical from Stormtroopers.
It was very well done, and again, you could see like they had the best opportunity, really. I mean, you had GOW that had that high ground, and then you had Intel that was so focused on GOW that I think that they just they must have just gotten taken by surprise by Kalando, and as a result, Kalando comes in there, does some significant damage to Intel. GOW takes that as their sign to go as well, and they try to push in. They only have 2, so they lose 1, and it just turns into a free-for-all at that point. Stormtroopers is just sitting there like, sure, we'll go and collect this win. Why not?
We'll have it. Yeah, we'll have it. I mean, definitely well earned. Great on that zone and holding down that spot. They pressured for it. At any point, really, maybe there's a situation where a team can coexist below them, but even the one slim attempt that a team made to do that was met with a lot of Watson fences and really no access to entry for that building. So they locked it down all the way to the end game. They take down the dub, and that'll actually look really good in the standings for them, as well as I'm sure you're aware, because so far they've been a little bit lackluster. They didn't get the momentum that they needed coming into these Stormpoint games.
Well, I mean, a number of teams really, they can kind of say the same. Blackhand, another one that really kind of started picking things up this time around. One thing that's kind of remained though is Intel. I mean, we haven't really seen a whole lot of them here today, but I feel like it's because they're playing that lockdown Watson style where they just pick a spot. Their spots have been great for them so far today, and then they kind of collect points here and there, and no real big fights unless it gets to the late game like we just saw. And unfortunately, Intel not able to pull out the win. But another game with them getting a lot of placement points, nice little stack of KP in their pocket. So they've been very, very consistent here today so far.
Yeah, and that's something that we expect from Intel at this point. I mean, definitely very seasoned players, and they know when to take jabs at what they tend to be able to poke out when they really need to. It's those zone teams that are really able to make the most of their situation that are having that success. Though I will say sometimes Intel is a victim to some of those sloppy pushes, and it can be really hard to defend, especially when you're early in zone. There's so many people looking at you, but I mean, with the amount of fighting we saw before, there were even a lot of squads in one single spot. It was pretty inevitable that they would at least find a good amount of placement when they were there so early.
Oof. I got to see another look at that fight early on with Deadass. Again, Deadass just kind of going around doing their thing, right? Picking up more KP, just taking fights. Lose one early on, and they kind of get put in a bad spot for the rest of the game that from that point on. But they still end up getting some KP to go along their way. Blackhand, again, stepping things, showing kind of signs of life here, what we were expecting to see of Blackhand pretty much all day today. The first 3 games, a little bit non-existent, but now starting to wake up.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting push there. Again, I think for how much credit we've given Asurus, that was pretty bold. I mean, the way that they just went on the hunt clean across the water behind Bamboo. Maybe that was the one bit of cover that they thought would let them make that push, and they are ultimately punished for it. They took an uphill battle. They maybe assumed that Blackhand wasn't as recovered as they were, but hey, at the end of the day, it's that zone team that was able to hold it down the entire game that takes it down, and they do get some points along the way as well. Not too shabby. 8 kills, putting them in first place confidently, both in placement and in points. That's a 20 banger for them.
Yeah, I mean, again, just kind of touching on that Asurus fight. Was it the best push ever? No, it wasn't. Do I have a problem with it at all? No, I really don't. I mean, this has been Asurus' bread and butter all night long today, is being that aggressive team that wants to take those fights, and eventually they're not going to go your way, right? So you're going to have some that just, for one reason or another, it just doesn't work out. I think you hit the nail on the head when I think when you said that Blackhand maybe wasn't as damaged, wasn't as beat up off of that fight as Asurus maybe was expecting them to, maybe getting there just a few seconds too late. But either way, I mean, this is what Asurus has been doing all night long, and it's been working out pretty nice for him. I would want to see them do the same push again next game. But you can see how stacked the top half of this lobby is. Deadass the only team really starting to pull away here a little bit.
Yeah, and it is kind of I'm a little disappointed to see that Deadass was able to hold that as a duo all by their lonesome. At no point did anyone decide to look their way and say, "Hey, that's a duo. That's probably pushable." You risk the third party, man. But when you're there so early, I mean, there's so many opportunities. So for Deadass to soak up that many points again after basically losing out on a very early game fight, I mean, that is just not an optimal scenario for any of these teams. They continue to pull away, and Deadass, maybe the redeeming arc here in Challengers number 4 for that second place they earned earlier. They're here for the dub, Poro.
They're trying to get it. They're looking pretty good for it as well. As I feel like I think you're absolutely right. I think Risen Rose in particular, there was just a couple of times there that they were right about to engage in a fight with Deadass, and I think either they just didn't get all the information, they didn't know that it was a 3v2, they didn't like the fight, they didn't like the terrain, whatever it was. It allowed Deadass to just, as you say, stay alive, keep soaking up more points, and kind of maintaining that first place spot.
Yeah, they do it again here. We'll see if they get away with it again or whether they have a slightly stronger game. We'll find out as we kick it back over to Tom and Tenric for game number 5, the second game on Storm Point, and our penultimate game of these Challenger Circuit number 4 finals. We'll catch you there.
Welcome to Game 5 of the Challenger Circuit number 4 finals here in North America. I'm Tenrec, back again with Tom for the final time tonight, although not for the final game. The second to last one headed to Storm Point, and after some interesting displays, Tom, we've seen some teams come out of the woodwork, we've seen some teams have some stellar displays, we've seen some teams develop some consistencies, but more than anything, we've seen Deadass just take an even bigger lead, and that has to be the highlight so far for me tonight.
I mean, yeah, Deadass have been, they've just taken that momentum. They've done what I think is difficult to do in a battle royale, what is, really impressive. Is they've just steamrolled all the way through the tournament. There hasn't been a point where they've reached that ceiling. They've been able to keep momentum across multiple days, playing against, hundreds of different teams at this point. And they've been able to do it even on another day. It's one thing having a good day, but having a good weekend, that is some consistency, and there isn't luck. It's all skill. They're choosing their opportunities well. As we've seen, they're able to deliver on both maps as well. 2 very different maps. They play out very differently. It's very common for teams to have a favored map to be a lot stronger on one map than another. But Deadass, Apex is easy. Apparently, they're just rolling through.
Hey, speaking of delivering from game to game, look what contest is no longer available. GOW now stands alone on Barometer. Team Orglis has finally acquiesced and handed over the site. It looks like they're going to set their sights on Northpad here. May have to fight up against Risen Rose, depending on who encounters who first. We'll see how that turns out as the islands begin occupation, and the circle finally lands through infiltration. Going to get the first bit of damage online in this lobby as they begin their approach here onto No Name. With this Newcastle in Taxi has a lot of time to play with on top of that Bloodhound Banga core we have seen several times over the course of these past 4 games now. And I mean, it's worked on both maps. I don't see a position, a situation in which Info is uncomfortable with this composition. So, you know, why let go of it now? Taxi and We the People trying to hold it down. His diff unfortunately falls on the outside. And Infiltration is getting infiltrated themselves. We the People burn to nearly a crisp. Back up while Taxi takes the reins, and diff is going to get finalized here as No Name really begins to pounce. In comes the door occupation from Chick as Gyozi and Den Pride take up the other spaces. It's just like sharks circling the boat until that crucial moment can come through. No Name searching for the right moment, and there it is. Gyozi still gonna fall here. A lot relies on Chick because of those purple shields, and they will fall too. It's just down to Den Pride. Can We the People in Taxi clutch it out? Yes, they can from in the building. They play the waiting game, and it works out. The first squad to get wiped, and Infiltration sits atop their corpses.
That was an absolute masterclass in turning a situation into your advantage. That is an unbelievable clutch factor there from Taxi and We the People. Yeah, it's speechless, right? It looks like it's all over. You know, Taxi's literally sat on a door, you know, popping cells, shivering. Like you described it perfectly. They're getting swarmed. But here we are now watching, you know, We the People and Taxi go and, you know, bring diff back in using this really interesting comp. They are clearly very happy to play edge and take their time on this composition. So I don't even think that losing diff is gonna, you know, be that much of a detriment to their game. They're probably gonna bring him back in, and they're probably gonna go ahead and do the Fish Farms Armory, maybe then jump at the Trident and head their way towards zone. Yeah, I think that this is a great composition for contesting, and they've picked a really good spot to fight for because it gives them plenty of time to work their way in. Speaking of armories, this one's very popular.
Oh yeah, RG and Deadass both clashing it out here in the armory. Is
I don't think they are. I think actually they just sat on top waiting.
Oh
what
yes.
Is this like,
oh yeah, Deadass is camping out. But
is this season 13? Like, what are we doing? Sat on top of armories. Come on.
Blackhand also has some sights here, so it's a risky position for Deadass to take, considering that they have been faltering placement-wise. Deadass has had no trouble finding kills, but their placement's still been in contention so far from game to game. And although the point lead is still there are still 2 games to play. And with only 2 teams down so far, a lot of potential to switch things around here as Blackhand encloses on another victim. That is going to be No Name finished off, I believe. Or no, it's Running Late, excuse me. Running Late finished off here. As Revival finishing up the armory, and Deadass has maintained their position, so this fight, it is imminent.
The question is, how are they going to play this? We might well see Goat throw the Horizon and Gravity Lift onto the jump pad, but, I mean, that's one way to clear a roof. Absolutely. Yeah. And now they're just going to go for it. That was a really well-timed Bangalore ultimate.
Yeah, really
Can
great
they get
stuff.
Away? Are they going to leave, or are they just going to fight? You can see that that Horizon Q in there. Get that team out. They're still down there. They've still got high ground now, Revival Games.
Yeah. They're able to play with the armory and the high ground on it now that they've gotten that Rolling Thunder out, but now comes another, and so everybody else is getting a little aggressed here, including RG from a different team. It looks like Team Orglis is aggressing? No, okay, it's TSS instead. I was gonna say, yeah, TSS is the team that's hopping into third party this fight before it's completely over, and Deadass is the first team to pay the price for it, while TSS takes some extra shots as well. Team Orglis is now getting shredded by Positive Entropy instead. That was the mix in the kill feed, as Team Orglis will fall. We're down to 15 squads. Positive Entropy able to find some extra KP. They're now up to 3, while TSS is up to 2, and hey, there's that early chaos that you're looking for on Stormpoint, but there were a lot more lulls in that first game here on Stormpoint in this series than what one may be used to, and so I'm wondering, is that pace, is that tempo going to change going into the following games, or are we still going to see a lot of edge play? Are we still going to see a lot of patient stuff coming from these teams? Infiltration, one of the teams displaying that patience, just going to clear out the armory themselves and get that extra loot to go along with what they've earned here.
I mean, armories apparently are just absolutely the most important thing on this whole map right now. We've got teams
It's
sitting
another
in the
camp.
zone to do armories. We've got teams that are just camping out, pitching a tent. And just to go back to the last armory we saw, while we see Blackhand moving their way in here, facing GOW, that Deadass may be a victim of their own success, a little bit overconfident, take fight just on the edge of the green zone. A bit of a questionable decision, and would they be so brave if they weren't sitting really pretty at the top of the leaderboard?
Definitely true. We talk about ego a lot when it comes to competitive Apex, and even in the one-to-one interactions, it can mean so much. Just that 1 inch, a shrivel, a simple breath of overconfidence can lead to so many mistakes in a game that is so movement-centric. As Risen Rose trying to make as little movement or noise as possible, as an exhibit on top of the armory is going to go ahead and just, get the rose-colored glasses off of this fight. It is happening, whether you like it or not. As the gates open up, Risen Rose attempt to be the gatekeepers, and they won't succeed just yet. Not too much damage, but now comes their own exhibit to play with on the low ground, as that's where their future opponents have headed off to. Big shield break coming from them as the rest of Stormtroopers attempt to fight it out, but they just do not have the right position. In Risen Rose, they were able to maintain their spot. No Rolling Thunder to get them out of this predicament. Stormtroopers out at 13th.
If you can, get this fight over without using any of your sort of really loud, attractive ultimates, especially the ones that make noise because of where they are in the map, where there's a lot of the sightlines are cut off. Mm-hmm. But that was, you see there, the thing that won them that fight and the real turning point was that Horizon gravity lift onto the launch pad inside the armory means that overrides the launch pad. So if you're trapped inside, the person above you throws that Horizon tactical onto the launch pad, you can't launch. Oh, you're getting launched up. You're getting presented nicely. Here, I'm a KP. Shoot me, please. So, the awareness and the game knowledge to use that trick, and that just shows the benefit of grinding this game, playing scrims, playing rank, playing pubs on these maps, to learn little tricks like that. That is the turning point, and that is what earned them the 3 kills right there.
You guys ready to watch some Hambino gameplay? I know, I'm just kidding. I love watching Hambino. But TSS, a team that we've gotten to talk about a couple times now, right on the edge of a couple fights, actually, right across from Blackhand, and TSS knows that drone is ready to launch an EMP if need be, if the fight comes, but I don't know if that's going to happen for a while. I mean, they are 2 circles ahead of the curve, as is Blackhand right now, so no pressure to really leave other than, the potential scent of KP, but TSS just gonna bunker up and stay safe for the time being. They have every right to. They have a bunch of death boxes they get to work with. They have a couple KP already in the bank, and they have a solid position on the leaderboard to work with thus far in the series. So, they have a couple consolations. They can take a step back. They can take a break. They can take a breath here, while a lot of other teams, they need to start getting desperate, if I'm being completely honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the number of teams left, and it might be a team less in a minute if that Trident keeps getting peppered. Are they going to make it? Are Team Intel going to escape?
Oh my gosh, I think they will. I think RG doesn't have enough sightlines to work with. That Trident's going to make it through, but Sauce is not satisfied with that. He wants to run it down. He wants to search for the escapees in Team Intel, and though it may take a second, I'm sure that Sauce is at least going to get some distance here. There's the catch-up, and there's the left Trident. Sauce is going to take down Jet to start things off, and now RG trying to finish the fight that they were able to instigate so expertly. Just one enemy to go in the equation, and Sauce going to try and finish that one off. I do believe we will have a couple rats in the remainder of Intel, but RG very satisfied, I think, with the KP that they've been able to get from that.
Saul's probably moaning about Prowlers getting a little bit of a cheeky nibble as he tried to push that fight there. It's really unfortunate. But I think that, we're seeing so few teams left right now, and I'm thinking about, going back to teams that are trying to play zone right now. There is no pressure. I'm looking at the map, and it is sparse.
It's empty.
Okay, it's Storm Point. There isn't a lot of spots to play, but there's literally more teams like chilling in Jurassic than there is like in Mill. And the zone is pulling probably directly outside of those mill buildings. Really strange, and it really changes the dynamic. The amount of teams that are in zone really makes such a difference to how the games play out.
And this gate in particular has been such a big arbiter of that. Now, first with Intel, and now here with Infiltration able to creep in on RG. RG really has no choice but to take this fight, at least for the time being, while Intel heads up the back line. Shinny is going to fall next after Diff is trying to hold down that line, but Shinny and Saz are going to fall first. A gate opens back up. Prophet trying to hold that high ground now with the gate intact and has a little bit of space to work with, but not too much at all. And now that leaves the room open for Intel to come back and reaggress. RVR and Flynn's are able to find some extra damage and potentially KP there as Diff falls next. And now Team Intel free to continue just their little journey. Very well played by them to stay there, but like you said, they kind of had a luxury to because this map is so sparse right now.
Really, Intel really making use of the information, or the intel that Seer gives you there to work out exactly where people were, to feel confident even as a duo walking up and pushing that fight, knowing that you have so much information in your back pocket, and you have that Valkyrie to get away whenever you need. They're just gonna finish these kills. I don't even know if that's their kill. They're just finishing it anyway. Why not?
Yeah. Prophet is still stuck back here, actually. Yeah, RG is still
about to
congested.
die to zone, no? Oh, he got that make it off just in time. That is a make it for the ages. Wow. Actually, 1 HP before he got that make it off.
But it looks like Intel are going to make sure that that's all for naught. They are going in deep, double dip in here. Flynn's taking a pot shot. And RG going to have to play for distance as well. They have to take the fight to them, and they will to an extent, actually. Shinny and Prophet surviving so far. Only one to go in RVR, and with meds galore, they may be able to carry it out. Can Shinny get this medkit in time? Yes, indeed. Once again, RG, they save themselves from the biggest enemy of all, the Storm. But they still have one more enemy in Intel to grab, and Saz is still out and down. So there's still so much more pressure to work against, especially considering that We The People has been circling the boat this entire time for Infiltration's favor. Could potentially get an easy fourth party here onto RVR, who's now who's now deciding to hightail it as RG makes the same choice. We The People about to meet them halfway. Oh, this could be such a good initiation. Here he comes. He's gonna find him there. The shots on the opening to the gateway. Prophet taking about half. Shinny gonna take the fight to him next. A little bit of red damage back and forth, but nothing broken yet. And We The People now realizing this is a 1v2 that he does not want to take, but the high ground has been handed back over to Revival. The smoke has to be used early on, and We The People still a little bit congested out, but RG, it looks like they're going to play for distance once again as Blackhand now decides to pull the trigger against TSS in their own building too. Couple else to work with, but not too many that will actually work that much longer. The Black Hole finally depleted as Blackhand tries to continue aggressing from this low ground. They're able to boot themselves back up. They're able to keep the distance going. They're able to play non-committally, but they are still falling. Kodigami the first two. TSS still trying to play with this. It's close quarters now. Yas deciding to initiate a little bit closer, and in the 1v1 to finish it off, it's Voltic that gets the job done and is able to up the rest of the team. Gonna have to recover Yaz at a beacon, but that is some extra KP for Blackhand that they desperately needed to make sure that their streak continues here.
And that situation is a direct result of the the lack of teams that we're seeing in zone right now. The fact that Blackhand felt the confidence to push a building right in the middle of zone is purely because there's so few teams around. But also interestingly there, we saw Dig of the Crypt get a kill there. He stole a kill using the 30-30 repeater, and to do slightly better in the previous game in Geyser that we casted was pick up some more of those easy kills. And that is exactly what they just did. Someone who's not finding it easy to grab kills right now is Upsushi and Kalando. They're brawling on the edge of zone. Who needs to be in zone? Being in zone's overrated. We can just fight on the edge. I don't want to fight one team. I want to fight one team and the game. Why not? Why don't we just all die to zone?
That might be the case considering that RG is about to come up against another opponent, this time in Buff Pathfinder, but Kalando's going to get finished off by PE at this point, and now may have to become an edge team
some serious help
themselves.
There.
Oh, jeez, you just keep coming in with them. You're crazy at this. I'm amazed.
I think it's just it's one of those things. You
said you're new to casting and you come up with this many puns?
You lose your British passport if you don't have dry humor at 4 a.m. So I'm just fighting for this citizenship.
It's much appreciated. Hey, it's great. The rest of the team set themselves up. The circle is completely unoccupied, at least the final one at this moment. Prophet, last remaining member for RG, as the other two cutoffs that had to make different rotations were stopped by Buff Pathfinder, and I believe I loved her. Yeah, no one is inside this final circle yet.
Breaking news, nobody wants to be in zone. Boomside just dipping in.
He's just barely getting his toes in.
Fantastic positioning from Boomside, controlling the whole zone.
That's Boomside's zone, baby. Nobody else.
I mean, look, I know that Storm Point is a fairly open map, and playing in late is usually the play in these smaller zones. But this is very special. We really are seeing something amazing here. I think that I already saw some people in chat in some of the other games saying that you can never complain. I've seen it on Twitter as well, saying that you can never complain that scrims aren't realistic. Fair enough, This is, if this was scrims and I was playing in it, I'd be molding. I'd be like, this is so unrealistic. Why is there only 6 teams in Zone 4? You would never play like this in ALGS. I guess, eating our words right now. Eating our words right now. And what will be interesting is actually, where are people going to move into? Everybody has to rotate. I mean, there is one option to get into zone.
Yeah.
You can Valcourt.
Yeah, Valcourt's definitely a good option.
Where are they going to land? And are they going to make a dangerous play by landing in the middle of zone and then becoming the focus of the other 5 teams as they rotate in? Is there a spot that you can play where you're not just going to be the meat in the sandwich?
Yeah. It's where Buff Pathfinder needed to go, I think, though, and it's good on them to do that, but they're the first to, and that's the problem. Positive Entropy is actually going to drop to the other side where Prophet is lying in wait, and the RG Rat may be in trouble here on the southern end. Is Prophet attempting to try and salvage this, but is not going to be able to. Bofer gets the finisher with the charge rifle, no less, and now we are down to 5. The final circle is beginning soon. I loved her, as well as Blackhand currently duking it out for this distance. I loved her in a bit of a precarious situation here. Meanwhile, Positive Entropy now getting pressured by Buff Pathfinder because of how choked up they are in that better part of the circle. Meanwhile, Crypt just chilling easy in the final building here on this circle. Gonna once again wait this out. I think they're doing it just for us, Tom, at this point.
I think so, but they actually have a difficult rotation because they could... if they don't move at exactly the right time, they could very easily get gatekept out of this next zone. They have a lot of open space to cross. You don't really want a Valcourt at this point in the game. They have Newcastle and they have Watson. So if they can make their way into a strong position, they can set up and potentially win this game.
Blackhand still taking a lot of pressure here, but they are moving a little bit more than I Loved Her is, and I Loved Her is a little bit stuck behind this rock, so they're actually a little choked up, and Blackhand's going to try and take advantage of that. They will absolutely succeed. Burnt to a crisp, but not without some collateral damage there. A massive depletion of those shields means that Blackhand's now back under that pressure, and actually, Robo is actually going to be able to get out, so I Loved Her is not yet out of the competition yet, but Blackhand at least has those KP. Not for long, though, is Buff Pathfinder now going to third party in. Bursty taking a lot of damage. Big Tarkov guy taking a lot of damage, but they are dealing it back as well. Still very up in the air because Blackhand did have a little bit of a recovery period, and it might have been enough as the Baby and Bursty both pressured. Now it's just Bursty against Kodagami and Yaz, while Robo waits in the wings on the other end of the circle. And now comes the Crypt. The moment that nobody was paying attention to them, they will try and fourth party this as soon as one team is done with the other. That being said, both will be absolutely fragmented. Blackhand is just 2 weak members strong, and Buff Pathfinder is 1 member on crumbs, but both of them are still somehow alive. Something has to break, and it finally does. Buff Pathfinder falls next, but Blackhand already under that pressure is not far behind. It's just down to Yaz. Robo from I Loved Her on the other end. And now, of all teams, it's Positive Entropy that has the positional awareness, the advantage, as the Crypt has to aggress Yaz first. They will succeed, and into the northern edge of the circle they venture.
That was. I mean, look, you have to hand it to the Crypt. That was fantastic positioning. They got a little bit lucky that 3 teams collapsed on that side of zone, but they had the awareness to immediately sweep in and not just go and take a spot in zone, to take a spot to gatekeep and to pick up those kills. They might not now make it past 3rd place just because of how the zone is laid out and where they are, but I don't think there was a better play they could have made. I don't think there was a better place they could have got, and I don't think they realized that if they swing left, they could fight the Rat and get 2nd place.
Yeah, Robo's in such a good spot as long as he's not found out, but the second he is, it's very much over, because if one team moves in, then he'll just run into the other one. So Robo's objective is to make sure that nobody sees them, but Crypt is very much occupied with Positive Entropy, and Positive Entropy could say the exact same thing, vice versa. I also don't think there's any Bloodhounds on either of these teams, so they couldn't find Robo even if they wanted to, which is perfect for him, poor guy. Circle gonna start coming in 5 seconds. The Crypt will have to move first, followed up by Robo. That natural cover will not be able to last forever. That rock will no longer be a part of the ring. He will have to move in on top of the Crypt. Here comes that rotation, that encroaching, still has to play procedurally, and meanwhile, Positive Entropy can play so much slower, but it doesn't come down to how slow you play. It's what team is left at the end of the day, and only one can be here in game number 5.
And it looks like the Crypt, unless they have an ult excel, have already used their Newcastle Castle Wall on the top of that rock, so they're not going to have that for this rotation. And there we go. They found him. They eliminated him. The Crypt takes second place. We are in a straight 3v3. And they did have an ult excel because here they come with that wall. We're in a straight 3v3. And look at Slater going around the back. Fantastic angles for Slater.
Insane rushdown coming from the Crypt so far. The speed unprecedented, and the defense also unimaginable. Still a lot of damage coming through, but it's starting to damage them too. Artsy and Slater able to get a lot done, but they're getting the knocks too. Just down to Slater. Now has to run for a moment, a little bit in the middle, and it is in fact Positive Entropy that still clutch it out. The positional advantage was enough, and it was still Crypt, despite their speed, that had to move in, had the disadvantage, and PE played with it beautifully. They are your Game 5 winners.
Wow, the Crypt, always the bridesmaids, never the bride. That was so close. And just to add insult to injury, that box took a lot of bullets. That was a lot of bullets put into that box. I might have missed some Twitter beef or something, because that kind of looked personal.
It did look like a little bit of a grudge there. But, I mean, if you're a team like that, I think you really need to push that hard, and Positive Entropy able to do so. This is one of the teams that we were looking at in this finals bracket that really needed to push hard in order to make it far, going into this sitting at 45th place, and unfortunately just couldn't get their feet off the ground so far. But this should be a really solid game for them. I wasn't able to see how many KP they had at the end of things. We will in just a moment when the leaderboard comes back up. But I think some other highlights to mention, the fact that Black Hand had probably their best game so far. Great positioning, great movement, and also amazing fights that they decided to take. They, for once, I feel, had control of the game. And that's something that we hadn't seen yet. And also Deadass falling early. I don't think they got any KP this game. And so that could be for the gap between first and the rest of the pack.
Yeah, it was a really, really great play by Black Hand to work out that there wasn't really many teams left in zone. It's one thing seeing the number in the top right corner and saying, okay, there's only 8 or 9 teams, but if all 8 or 9 of those teams are sat in the zone, then it isn't really that different. There's just no teams on the edge. So for them to work out, they could take those fights really. When you're a team as good as Black Hand and you back yourself all day, it's even against a team that has the EMP, bottom gen. But the game-winning play was the Valkyrie all the way to the back of the zone. That was a perfect play from that choke, just coming out of checkpoint. We knew they sat there, they got fed those couple of kills, and everybody decided that dying to zone was, the coolest thing to do. And then they hit that Valkyrie, and they landed perfectly right at the back. They put themselves in the game-winning position, and then they just had that little bit extra in that final 3v3 to clutch it out. I mean, the Crypt, man, what a rough day in terms of it's so unfortunate as a team when you are putting down really good points, right? It's not to say that this second place in the game they played isn't fantastic, but it feels rough when you lose 2 of those 3v3s. But it looks like the Crypt have done exactly what I said we're going to do at the beginning. They've played zone, they've done a great spot, they've definitely booked their place queue, and they'll just be hoping they can clutch out one of these final game wins if they match point situation.
Yeah, I think at this point, a lot of it is just about getting to that winner's bracket. That is such a priority here for teams like the Crypt, who have been towing this line for so very long. PE ended up getting 9 kills that round, giving them 21 total points. Black Hand not far behind, grabbing 14 KP, and I believe the best placement that they've had all night so far in 4th place. That's 19 boosted on top of the 13, I believe, that they were able to get so far. So that'll give them 35. That's a great booster seat up there. The Crypt, like we said, again, very solid placement. I loved her. Also, making waves, a team that needs to win in order to make it to PLQ. A solid imprint. Definitely not going to get first, after this Game 5, but they're in a position to be able to maybe supersede the podium come Game 6 if all goes well enough. Just a lot of things still very much up in the air right now. Unfortunately, a couple teams still just have not managed to have the right game. Orglis once again falling very early, this time not to the contest of GOW, but rather just from playing the game. Deadass still on top of that final leaderboard. I loved her, now up to 2nd, and the Crypt up in 3rd. A lot of big shifts here, actually, Tom.
I mean, I'm just looking at the last few teams on this leaderboard, and I'm very surprised actually to see Infiltration all the way down in in 17th. They had a much better game there. Obviously, a really really big clutch up moment in that off drop fight, and obviously being force always disruptive to your game. Less so if you're in like Infiltration. But when you look at the talent that they have on that team, we spoke about DivQ and his experience, former Pro League IGL in the EMEA region. They got third in the ALGS Champs 2021. DivQ knows his way around. But you have to wonder how useful is that experience sometimes when the lobbies play out like this? When they're playing out with 7, 8, 9 teams right at the end, how useful is that Pro League experience? Is it comparable? How much can you rely on your previous experiences in a different region, in a different meta? Are we sometimes overestimating what it's like to be a team like that just picks up for one tournament, just comes straight in, doesn't really scrim, versus teams like the Crypt, versus teams like Intel, versus teams like Stormtroopers that are playing those scrims every day? The NA region's been really, really desperate to scrim. Vize off Stormtroopers has been putting on those scrims. They've been match point format. They've been playing 7, 8, 9, 10 games a night sometimes. And they're getting used to each other. They're mitigating that randomness of playing against teams that you don't know. So maybe it's it's not as easy as just walking straight in from Pro League and rolling one of these Challenger Circuit lobbies.
Yeah, that Apex ego really in it for the long haul, just as these teams are. We got one more game for you guys. Mellow and Boro are going to take us out in the final Challenger Circuit of the split. I can't wait, neither can Dom, but that'll be it for us tonight. We just have one more game, and we're not here for it, but we appreciate you tuning into us specifically, I guess. But stay tuned, please. After this short break, we got Game 6 coming at you.
Hello and welcome back to the final game here of this final Challenger Circuit series. I'm always joining me once again, Bellacrit, as we discussed in the green room. Can we get? How can Game 6 get more scrimmy than Game 5? I just don't even know.
I mean, we just saw Game 6, right? NA Game 6. So this Game 7 should be pretty interesting, as teams will obviously pull it back, dial it back, play really good macro, and not take fights to the edge zone. Right?
6,
Maybe.
7. I don't even know what game it is anymore, honestly. But we definitely, yeah. Regardless, we saw some questionable fights there. Let's put it on the table. Let's address the elephant in the room. It seemed like there's a few teams trying to make a late game run or a late day run here by just taking the most questionable fights that you could possibly take. And for some it worked out pretty well. And to be honest, I mean, we still have 5 teams really, maybe more. I can't remember the leaderboard offhand, but I know that we have 5 teams at least that are over 40 points. Deadass went out early that game, so kind of allowed the competition to catch up here a little bit. So yeah, there we go. Take a look. You got all the way down to Team Intel that have over 40 points, and then you can consider TSS, Risen Rose, Stormtroopers, all these other teams with around 30. I mean, that's not outside of the realm of possibility that they catch Deadass if Deadass has another poor game here, Jeff.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, for some of these teams, this is about as good as, over. They're kind of, like we said, they're kind of kicking the can down the street. But we still want to see some, hopefully, a dying breath of some entertaining high-level Apex. Because remember, there are some players here that are very good at the game. Believe it or not, based on what you're seeing, you might not believe it. But, I mean, there is a lot of talent in here. And obviously, the 3v3s are a blast to watch. But there are still points to be had, Poro. I don't necessarily know if any teams are quite on the cusp of finding their spot in that Pro League Split 2 qualifier, that it would largely benefit from a last scrap of KP points. But I guess we'll find out. Infiltration, we'll get to find out the final score of this contest. So far, 1-1.
Yeah, so far the trade's coming through. Looks like Infiltration will clean up No Name quicker than they've cleaned them up so far. Any point here tonight is not going No Name's way that time around, but everything working out Infiltration that time.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely...
Is it even worth looting the crate at that point?
They definitely were able to execute that even quicker than last time, and so what do we have to check off on our Game 6 bingo? Though. We already got a contest. Are we going to see a chow on the a repeat chow on the little bunkers? Right out here we see RG already getting into position for the armory. We'll see if there's another squad that sits on top of them. I mean, so far this ring is looking also quite central, which means that in all honesty, I think this might be one of the few opportunities where teams should have pretty decent pickings on what rotation they're going to make. Though, of course, everyone crashing in the middle can be a little bit disastrous. And already some of these rotations crashing as Stormtroopers finds at least a couple of angles to shoot at another squad. But they're sitting on triple wide, so not exactly the best situation in terms of loot to be taking a fight.
Not great indeed, but you know what? It's if nothing else, you just hope for the best. Take the shot. Hopefully, they're as bad off as you are. But I was looking down at Asurus, who I think is pushing Infiltration, and yeah, there you go. DiffyQ already taken out as We the People and With Passion now just playing, guarding what they can of this compound. Is Asurus? I guess. Look, they've been taking every fight that they could possibly find here. I think this time around, oh my God, it gets the crack through the window. Love to see it. There you go. Uriel going to get taken down, though, as Asurus maybe biting off a little bit more than they could chew.
There was a reply there for a moment, Uriel going down, but it looks like Asurus has, at the very least, successfully sieged the building, but haven't exactly finished off the squad by any means, so they're starting to fly on out here, try and figure out where this squad is. The Newcastle ultimate is there, but how much really is that going to do with a full aggro Asurus on your tail? Apparently a lot. They still can't kill this team, man. It actually goes down, but there's still one left.
They're giving him the okie doke, man, ringing around the rosy. Uriel going to go down again, and now Thalos in a little bit of trouble. He's going to get taken very low, but does win the fight. And Infiltration will go down yet again off of the third party. So Asurus doing a little bit of homework there.
Yeah, great job by them. This is more, I think, characteristic in terms of fight timings. Whether it was worth going all the way out here for that fight under normal circumstances, that is that may leave a lot to be desired. But in any case, they are able to execute, and we will no longer see Infiltration on the map for the final game of this Challenger Circuit final.
Well, cutting back over to GOW, as has been the case through pretty much every game here tonight. Early game fighting for them. This time, going to be with Team Orglis, who is on the move yet again here. And it looks like they're trying to maybe go for a wrap, and another team actually just going to go ahead and Valcult right on out there. Now Orglis pushing into the backside. Can GOW be ready for this? Detox going to go down immediately to Doctorina.
Yeah, and Doctorina actually the only one taking damage at this point. I might have spoken too soon. It's probably did eat a little bit of damage as well, but they are definitely laying it down in return. Already the Horizon falling down right in front, potentially to just fall. That Skynade was nasty though, and suddenly Team Orglis feeling a little bit more on the back foot, and a massive cancellation. Seer is such a cool character and very fair and balanced. I love it.
Just a pain in the ass. Well, Orglis will eventually get rid of Retzi here, and there you go. GOW will get taken down as Orglis is coming alive here in game number 6. GOW gets taken down. Intel also getting involved in some early scrapping here.
Yeah, we actually got to put a little point on the Orglis column from their contest earlier today. So they almost make it up 3-2. Obviously, that wasn't an on-drop contest, but they're probably feeling pretty all right about it, having eliminated their game 1 through 3, game 1 through 4, realistically, Menace. Yeah, they're kind of chilling, scrapping some points. Meanwhile, Redeem scrapping for some damage on the Prowlers, trying to maybe get those shields up a little bit, get a little bit of loot for their troubles as well. Actually, that's another team that is definitely not a Prowler. That is a purple shield that is getting smacked by Joey and the rest of this gang. So, yeah, trying to hold out this edge a little bit, maybe looking to plan their next rotation. And ultimately, things have slowed down a bit, Poro. In a surprising turn of events, we have 16 squads up still.
Yeah, we definitely saw some S-tier buffoonery taking place around that pit earlier last game. This time, it's like, as you said, it's down just a bit. And moral victories for Team Orglis over GOW. Moral victory is still victory. It still counts. As yep, Sushi Hal is a downed player just gets yeeted across. So yeah, well, okay, I guess it's game 6. We're taking that. Yeah.
Oh, 100 every single time, Poro. No doubt. That is a lot of Watson fences, but they aren't exactly going to do a whole lot. And Up Sushi gets blown up.
Oh, Up Sushi, you don't want to be the first one there, do you? That's exactly what's going to happen if you are, as Stormtroopers will get taken down. Wow. Risen Rose also going down there in the kill feed, as Kalando going to pick that one up.
Well, we lied. We are down to 14, ring 1. You don't necessarily love to see that, but it is what it is. The Game 6 syndrome truly in full effect, and the fighting just does not stop over here by Jurassic Team Intel, losing Icy. And this 3v3 is starting to look a little bit dire. I actually don't even know if it's a straight-up 3v3. Flinzar trying to find an angle here, trying to find a little bit of damage as a reply. They actually do get a Thirst, and that's going to be on to Bursty, and they might get the res as well.
Looks like they're going to go for it. Good defense here from Jet. As try to get Icy back up. Actually, they're going to pull off of it there. As it's going to be Flinzar. Oh, my goodness. Okay, big Tarkov guy. Just gets absolutely roasted. And then another one, as the shield will go down. But all in all, mission accomplished. Their Seer is back on his feet. And Team Intel is back up to 3 strong, still playing the hard cover as they go for the reset.
Yeah, this has been a decent game for them so far. They've managed to hold out. And again, credit where credit's due. When you're able to defend against bad pushes in these lobbies, it is a pretty dang big deal, even after getting a knock on one of your players. So Intel holding strong. And this area is a little bit interesting because the LOS seems so prevalent. There are so many people that can look at you from every which way across Jurassic, so it's a little tough to hold in that area without a building. Team Orglis on the hunt. The crypt has been sent there. In fact, they are now the ones in the crypt.
So you've been listening to Tom too much. You start to come in here and do this. I see how it is.
It's that time of the night, Pori. Listen.
It is. That's fair.
Yeah, but I mean, the fights continue, unsurprisingly. We're down to 12 squads here, and Deadass actually really only getting a small piece of what we usually see them to be very busy with engagements. So we'll see what they can pick up here, but they're just dead center in the middle. Right after I make what I thought was a clever point about holding around Jurassic and how it's not exactly easy. Deadass is just waltzing in. Finally, Intel decides to punish them for their hubris a little bit, and Goat might be going down.
Oh, and it looks like he does. The smokes will go down, though, to probably they'll try to get the defense, but unfortunately the flush comes through, and now Goat will have to go ahead and pick that back up as Intel's starting to flex out from their hard cover position, and it is paying off some dividends right now. Icy finding a little bit of an angle here. Jet looking through the smoke's going to find some damage as well. You can see some shots coming in from long range. I'm not sure who those are from, but Intel definitely getting paid right now.
Yeah, they're definitely eating a little bit of damage in return, but absolutely worth it when you're picking up KP for your troubles. Deadass, our leaders going into this final game, finally eliminated from the lobby after walking clear down the middle of a completely open area to the shock of absolutely everyone, I'm sure. And now Intel in a similar position.
Yeah, they are. They're in a little bit of trouble as Running Late coming through and finding an unexpected angle onto the Intel gang. As I believe, yeah, 00 negative is exactly where Icy is. They know that they've got this guy pinned away from the rest of the team. More shots coming from Running Late. I think they would love to go and try to take out that solo member of Intel, but unfortunately, the third party going to prevent them from doing so. Here's 00 negative, and Meatball will just pull on out.
We're going to pull out.
Oh, Black Hand.
The team that has been really hunting for it as these lobbies have just devolved into chaos. They are really just kind of relishing in it. They love the action, they love the fighting, and of course they love a Digit of Volt with a Bangalore on your team. That definitely never hurts. So they've already got 2 reds to their name, Pora. They are doing work right now.
What is it with Black Hand where it's just it feels like they're completely untouchable for half the games, be it the beginning half or the second half, but the other half they're just non-existent. I don't know what it is about this squad that it just seems that they can't pull it together for 6 full games, but damn, they are good for 3.
Yeah, absolutely. They continue to make it happen for the time being. We're finally going to get to see Redeem picking off the last little piece of, well, potentially, seemingly have walked right past it. Nope, Team Intel does in fact get claimed. The last piece of that Team Intel pie going the way of Redeem. So Redeem, another team that has had hot and cold showing so far in this Challenger circuit, finally finding their way into another final, but it is certainly a statement to call this a Challenger circuit finals lobby, as the way that it's played out, it's looking a little bit more like some of my ranked games, but it is what it is. It's a blast to watch, and we're gonna see which teams truly just excel when all sense of decorum has been lost in the lobby.
Look, I've always thought that BRs they show how well you deal with things going horribly wrong. Anybody can be good at a BR when everything's going your way. It's how well can you pull things off, can you perform when everything's going shitty. And right now, that is kind of where all these teams are at in this final game, as Revival trying to make the push here. It's working out so far. No! Prophet's going to go down. No backup there for Prophet as the push comes out.
Yeah, and the last member actually falling off the edge, which means there should be a pretty free res here. You see them coming up to zip, but it's definitely going to be too little too late, and Revival Games now has them trapped in the middle here. Gonna give a little one clip for their troubles here as they chase down this Valkyrie, and that wingman shot to clean off Kalando.
Goodbye, Kalando. Well, this is it's working out pretty damn well for Revival so far. 5 kills, 3 up. They have complete control over that northeastern side of the circle. Now they do have a solo kind of in between them and the center of the next zone. And not Baby, not Lil Baby, but Da Baby.
Da Baby.
Let's see. I've got to. This is the boomer in me. I've got to keep up. It's it's been very confusing for me in the rap game these days.
Yeah.
But Da Baby is the Apex Legends player. Baby and Lil Baby are rappers. Just in case you needed to get caught up.
I'm glad
There
we
you
had
go.
a moment to breathe for you to give us
Rap
that very
moment here
valuable
for-
lesson, Poro.
from poor Source. I got you. I've got
That's
you
definitely
covered.
what I needed. Absolutely what we needed right now. I mean, for once in this entire series, things have slowed down, though.
It's slowed down enough to where I could get my point off. It's great. I love it. I can't help. I can't thank them enough for this.
You know, we were asking at the beginning of this series, sometimes we talk about zones and how some zones are able to house more teams than others, but after seeing that endgame in Game 5, we wonder what zone can hold the least amount of teams at the same time. This might be a contender for that title right now, Poro.
Let's see Hambino hopping in and out of the whip there. Trying to make a decision as the rest of TSS just kind of hanging out on the southeastern side now. Team Orglis, the only one really in the next zone as we kind of get the eye in the sky, the God view of the very hard south shifting circles that are coming. But Blackhand already 7 kills in the bag. Asurus 6 kills in the bag as well, as they're making a nice little run here in the very end of the day, trying to go for that first place spot.
Yeah, they're gunning for it. I mean, what better time to do it? They've got a decent position. There's just red shields all over. I guess that's what we would expect when everyone's just been shooting all freaking day, and running late is just going to get completely wiped out. I didn't realize they were already down to a solo, so Blackhand is just, I mean, just eating it all up, man. Everything that comes their way. They got a Kraber in hand as well to continue to deal damage. That guy definitely looked like he was going to get his head blown off, but it didn't come through on this occasion. Blackhand might follow up with that shortly, and it's actually going to be TSS, who doesn't have like the most stellar position, all things considered, but RG can't really open peek this because there's a little bit of LOS from a couple of different directions, so they kind of have to play a little bit tucked up underneath this hill. You can see the pings there over by the blue fences, and a team playing there, and really one of the few times where that zone is playable. But Revival Games does not want to let it be playable. They're entry fragging with the Horizon, which is something that you don't necessarily love to see, especially when the placement of that ultimate isn't quite right, and Revival Games is down 1.
Oh my goodness, Asurus just kind of holding the line here as Revival Games will find one of the trade coming through. Shinny, the last one up. Shiny, Shinny, I don't know what the correct nomenclature is exactly, but it doesn't really matter because Revival Games is out, and somehow Asurus holds the line against the push.
Yeah, and
look at Orglis. Oh, Orglis.
Shambles for sure. It is really kind of hard to watch when Horizon teams really just kind of do it all backwards. You need to find that entry frag that pushes that team into a defensive position, and then get your ultimate into position to either, again, make their situation even worse, find some cracks, maybe a knock, to just go up into the sky in front of 3 people's faces. That's exactly what happens there. Your Horizon gets blown up, you suddenly lose pressure, and you're funneling from effectively one angle between a rock. So getting absolutely blown up there on that push. Not every push is made equal here, and they fall. Team Orglis now trying to also get a little bit of a punish here on Asurus, even after Asurus successfully defended that push from RG.
Well, I hate criticizing teams because you never know exactly what kind of information they're working with, but it feels like that Orglis may have had a really good opportunity to kind of go in and clean up Asurus after that fight, but they kind of let it sit. They let it slide here for a little bit, and now Blackhand is right on their doorstep, and right off the bat, Blackhand is finding the big knocks here as, yep, they will go ahead and clean up another one. And even though Blackhand is beaten and bruised, looks like they might be set to win this. And as a result, Asurus now, they get to kind of come in here and third party all of this.
Yeah, they make it happen here. They swing on in. Team Orglis gets taken out, and now Asurus looking like they have a 2v1 scenario, actually finding the crack, but now on the back foot, God of Gotti actually down to just a bit of HP and isn't able to hold. Blackhand are your Game 6 winners, and they potentially might have climbed the ranks with the amount of kills that they picked up. Could they finally have taken down a challenger circuit after so many attempts of getting so dang close? One thing's pretty much for sure, though, you will be seeing this team in the Split 2 qualifiers. No freaking doubt. Well deserved, and a little bow on top to clean things off at the end of this challenger circuit final.
16 kill points in that last one. Goodness. I mean, to go on top of what I think they had 14 last game. I don't want to take anything away from Black Hand's performance in that game for sure, but man, where are they for the first half of the day? Like, I think they had like 3 points in the first 3 games, and then it's just like a switch gets flipped, and they switch over to this map, and everything just comes together perfectly. They start going out and just farming the lobby. Now, that being said, we were talking about it going into this, a little tongue-in-cheek, joking around a little bit, that it seems like maybe Black Hand collects the most points off of lobbies where the wheels have kind of fallen off a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe that's the case. I don't know.
It really does come down, I think, to the fact that when the train has fallen off the tracks, completely the best at looting that thing for all the gold on it. Like when there's a little bit more composure, when people want to play a little bit more controlled, where Black Hand with a GOW or a DAS or an RG that is really scrapping for pinning for points for control over. Black Hand can't just get a free reign on third parties and on crazy fights, especially with how many teams were willing to play zone on World's Edge. So Storm, it kind of blew things open in the worst way for a lot of teams, but in the best way for Black Hand.
It's I don't want to say it's frustrating, because it's not, and there you go. This is all everything from Black Hand the whole time. Top in kills, top in points, top in damage dealt, 12th in average placement. That's and 11th in average time survive. That's the thing that kind of it's mind-boggling about Black Hand, because man, when they look good, they look just unbeatable. But the consistency is just not there at all. And it's like they're either the best damn team in the lobby, or they are just going out in 16th with nothing. And I don't understand what you can do if you're Black Hand. Well, I guess I don't know what, if you're a coach or an analyst for Black Hand, what do you try to tell them to try to kind of level out those highs and lows a little bit, to where you can get a little bit more consistency?
Well, I will say, I think, they haven't shown consistency in the finals lobbies themselves. You got to give them credit for making it to every single one of these dang things. That means that they're able to execute. Maybe when the lobbies are, like we've said, a little bit more chaotic, a little bit less control. I think the big improvement that can be made for a squad like Black Hand, who, again, props to them, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we'll get to see the points, but they're going to finish top in terms of overall points for all the challenger circuits. So,
for sure.
I mean, truly moving into those more difficult lobbies, it's going to be that composure and sort of constructing game plans that are a little bit more robust, because sometimes these game plans work, but it relies on the volatility of some teams making mistakes. If they learn to force those mistakes to happen, and of course clean up sort of their rotation plan a little bit to kind of be more aware of what teams they can bully and what teams they can scrap points from, I mean, you're going to be seeing them in first place every time. The second place curse is broken here by a pretty decent margin there from what we saw in the last game. Not sure about margin overall in this final leaderboard. We will see that shortly, but I mean, they farmed for all intents and purposes. They farmed Game 6.
No, the last 2 games really, and on top of that, again, this is, I don't want to take anything away from what Black Hand is doing. I think it's just the every week every time I come in here and see this, I'm like, man, this team is really, really good. I mean, it just feels like, if they can find that little bit of consistency, they could be at the top every time. Now, this is, I will say, based off of what I've seen from Black Hand, this is a team that would definitely benefit from having a consistent lobby of always the same teams, to where they can kind of know exactly where everybody is and how to play around it, and play around their areas, So, maybe that's the thing that would really kind of help this team, is having that consistent lobby where they can analyze it, they can practice for it, they can strategize for the exact same teams every single time. Yeah.
And I mean, at least for this time around, you got to give them props. You got to give props to really a lot of these teams. Asuras became,
I loved Asuras today,
like a whole different beast. I want to say the same thing about Risen Rose too. I mean, you're not going to see it in the latter half of games by any means, but the way that they worked World's Edge, I think, was a testament to how that squad has definitely worked on different parts of their game style where I think that they were lacking a little bit. So for them to activate, for them to be more proactive, and for them to be unafraid of these lobbies, I think has made a colossal difference. Though, again, a little bit more structure. I think that they actually might be one of the teams that has worked on their game plans a little bit more diligently. So the way that those last couple of lobbies descended into madness, definitely a little bit more difficult to play around. But shout out to a lot of these squads. Asuras, they showed up. At one point we were giving them a lot of credit for the way that they were working the edge of zones and clearing their back and clearing the edge to make sure that they were kind of the last ones there and that they had good loot to continue fighting. I think that turned into some crazy pushes in the end, but the theory was definitely on display, at least in the earlier parts of the matches.
Well, let's take a look at the overall leaderboard for today. Was that final performance from Black Hand enough? And yes, it is. It is going to jump them up into first place. What a late end of day showing from Black Hand. Again, don't want to harp on it too much, but the first 3 games, fairly forgettable. And then they just come in here, flip the switch, and just put on a show for these last 3 games to take that #1 spot here today.
Yeah, dead ass there. They were absolute menaces in those World's Edge games for sure, racking up a lot of points, getting one too many placement points on one of those Storm Point games as well, so that certainly helped climb their way up to that top 2 position. And Asuras, we've talked about them a lot, but extracting value and having a game plan that works in these lobbies, I think, is the name of the game. 100% is if your strategy isn't robust enough to deal with these lobbies, then maybe it's time to turn it up a little bit, change it up a little bit. But ultimately, we don't know what it's going to look like, because this split 2 qualifier, tripped over there a little bit, because I'm actually so excited to watch that go down, because we don't just get the top challengers teams that have been really scrapping throughout the entire split 1 season. We're also going to see those 8 Pro League relegated teams, and we're going to see the dynamic of all of those teams mixed up, and that will really put out the question that I think a lot of people are asking is, are these teams going to be able to stand up to the caliber of some of those Pro League teams that have been competing for so long and having such massive showings, and that we know are very capable players? That's what I can't wait to find out.
Yeah, I think you're talking about teams that through these challenger circuit, I mean, the more games they play together, the more reps that they get together in lobbies like this, the better the communication is going to get, the more likely they are going to be able to take these fights against these relegated pro teams. So I'm excited to see how it turns out as well. I think that a lot of the teams in these lobbies that we've seen over the 4 challenger circuits, all of our winners, obviously, but then other teams as well. Like you said, Deadass, I think Intel is another one that's, kind of got a pretty good read on maybe how to play that tower defense style of play that we've been seeing. It's going to be really interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see how that lobby shapes up and these different styles of play all conflicting and coming together against each other. It's going to be, I'm pumped about it.
Yeah, I am too. I cannot wait to tune into those. And y'all got them, everyone watching, you got to make sure you tune into those as well, because that will decide what few teams from the Challenger circuit, along with the mix of relegated Pro League teams, will be playing in your Split 2 Pro League. So we have that Split 2 Pro League qualifier coming up with a lot of the names and faces that you've been seeing throughout this Challenger circuit. Of course, big congratulations to Black Hand, who is here from day 1, from Challenger Circuit 1 finals all the way through, finally catching a dub. So they will obviously be getting their spot in the qualifier, not just because they won today, but because they have just been farming these lobbies all throughout. So congratulations to Black Hand, and congratulations to all of the other teams that will be earning their spot in that preseason or that Pro League qualifier, and potentially making a bid for the big time, making a bid for Pro League, where the level of Apex is really what everyone is striving for in these lobbies. And as a quick,
I can't hear anything you're saying. So
sorry, I was trying to find the. I was trying to find the. I was trying to find the date so I could tell everyone, but yeah.
Sorry, my Discord completely crapped out on me there, so I just got to stare blankly at the screen. I saw your lips moving, but I didn't hear the words coming out of your mouth. But everything that you said, I agree.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad we're always on the same page, Poro.
100%.
But in any case, thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure you don't miss those
Yes.
Splatoon Pro League qualifiers. Make sure that you subscribe to all of the wonderful people. Follow them on Twitter. All the wonderful people that are making this happen behind the scenes. By the way, there is a massive team of production people, of observers, of game directors. Shout out all of those people that are making this possible. Shout out to all the players for grinding through these massive gauntlets, because holy crap, those are just some long-winded days of very difficult to play Apex. And shout out to everyone watching. Thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you for that Splatoon Pro League qualifier.
Later.